Please rise for the Chairman of Thanet District Council.
Right. Good evening, members and officers of the Council and members of the press and public. I welcome you to this meeting of the Council. If the fire alarm is activated, please vacate the offices via the stairs, either through the security doors to my right or opposite the lift in the foyer. Please do not use the lift. Please assemble in Hawley Square on the green. Officers will assist you and advise you when it is deemed safe to return to the chamber. I would advise you that if filming takes place, anybody in attendance at the public gallery may have their image captured. I urge anybody filming proceedings to avoid filming members of the public, particularly if there are children present. Does anyone attend to film the meeting? Yes. Any member of the public who objects to the possibility of being filmed may wish to take the opportunity to leave the meeting. No? Any filming or recording will not be permitted for any other item of business where exempt or confidential information is considered, following the exclusion of press and public from the meetings. Would everyone present please ensure their mobile phone are turned to silent and they are not used to make or receive phone calls when the meeting is in progress. Apologies for absence. I have received apologies from Councillor Crittenden, Brzezicki, Paul Moore. Are there any other apologies for absence?
The Chair.
And they are?
Do you want to go to first?
Okay, Councillor Nichols and Councillor Towning. And Councillor Dawson.
Apologies from Councillor Packman.
Thank you. I move that the minutes of the meeting of the Council held on the 13th of July 2023 be approved and signed as a correct record. Would the Vice Chair please second?
Seconded, Chair.
Do members agree? Agree. Thank you. Item Agenda 3, announcements. I have not been informed of any announcements. Item Agenda 4, declarations of interest. i.e. declarations of interest. Agenda Item 5, petitions. The result of 2 petitions are being reported to the Council in accordance with the Council's petition protocol. Right, so we've got Agenda Item 5A, Jackie Baker's petition. The Council's response to the petition is outlined in a report before members. The petition organiser, June Terrell, will present the petition, and it has been signed by over 1,500 people. Mr. Terrell, please approach the microphone. You have 3.
Good evening. My name is June, and along with Ramsgate resident Christine, we launched a petition to raise awareness surrounding the much-needed improvements at Jackie Baker's. We are both regular users of Jackie Baker's, with Christine using the site for her daily dog walks and myself being part of the Thanet Sunday Football League. Jackie Baker's, once home to a football and hockey AstroTurf pitch and cricket ground, has seen a huge decline in their facilities over the years. The cricket ground is no more, and the amount of vandalism caused to the AstroTurf pitch has deemed it unusable. Jackie Baker's was gifted to the people of Ramsgate by Dame Janet back in 1924, and we believe by making improvements to the site would be beneficial not only to the local but also to the sporting communities. After carrying out some research, we feel the improvements required include extra bins located around the site, both general and dog waste, benches along the main path and outer edges of the football pitches, a changing facility complete with running hot water for showers and toilets, improved pitches for footballers and a car park. We have taken further feedback from the communities and feel that a sports pavilion with cafe on site would be widely welcomed by all that use Jackie Baker's. A larger play area with picnic benches and a BMX skate park would make great use of one of the unused pitches. Since launching the petition in June, we have seen improvements starting to be made, with the grass being maintained to a better standard and new goalposts being provided. We would like to propose a weekly meeting at Jackie Baker's with open spaces and the head of services, where Christine and myself can be kept informed of any progress and also see that we, the people of Ramsgate, are being listened to. We have a community action group where we will be advertising fundraising ideas to enable us to continue to contribute in the improvements for Jackie Baker's. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Do members have any comments? Councillor.
Alban. Councillor Alban.
Councillor Alban.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Mr. Tyrrell, for your petition. As you obviously know, we've met on several occasions since we were elected back in May. And as I've told you, Jackie Baker's and the redevelopment of that land is a priority for me. And I can assure you that along with myself and the senior officers of this council, that is what we intend to do. You will be consulted at every level and every point of when we are making changes, so the residents can have their input as to what they would like and how they would like us to proceed. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Alban.
Sorry, Councillor Davis. Councillor Davis.
Councillor Davis.
Thank you, Chair. I'd just like to welcome this petition and to say, as a lifelong resident of Ramsgate, how much all residents support the maintenance of Jackie Baker's. As a councillor, I'd like to raise the fact that 106 monies were allocated for the restoration of these changing rooms in the pavilion several years ago, which it appears have not been used for the purposes they were allocated for. I'd therefore like to recommend that this comes back also, that whilst we need this facility to be brought back into good condition for the benefit of the people, we also need a lessons learned report into why we've ended up in this situation. However, I totally support any moves to protect Jackie Baker's as one of the few green spaces that hopefully the covenants that protect it will be respected by this council. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Davis. Councillor Wing.
Thank you, and thank you for bringing the petition. And I'm so glad it's actually focused on our youth, because very rarely do we actually discuss things in here which are about young people. I think in our own ward we've benefited from the investment that we've seen in Ellington Park, and the addition of toilets and a cafe has really given the whole place a real sense of ownership and actually turned it into a wonderful place for everybody to be. So I wish you well, and you'll certainly have our support.
Thank you, Councillor Wing.
Thank you very much, Chair. Yes. And just before this meeting, a Democratic Service Officer came to see if I'd had any technical problems accessing the agenda today, and I had to tell them it was actually the other Councillor Scobie. So we're going to have this confusion, I'm afraid. Thank you, June, for the petition. We've been working together over the last few months, and I think it is clear that for the first time in a long time, there's going to be some action already taken and more going to happen at Jackie Baker's. I think one of the things we need to reflect on is how an asset that has the potential to raise revenue for the council has been allowed to go into such a state of disrepair. And that is not a political point, it's the point around investment in assets in open spaces across Thanet. But the challenge with this asset, and which is why I found it very frustrating, is there is the opportunity for this in a time when the council is struggling for money to actually bring money into the council's coffers, but also to allow this space to be used. Councillor Wing referenced Ellington Park. The conversations June, Chris and I have been having in recent months has been about how we can replicate that model, because one of the things that Jackie Baker's has is huge amounts of space to run events, and there's all sorts of opportunities there. There's 2 points that I want to raise about this petition, just more specifically. Absolutely support the thrust of it, and thanks to Councillor Alban for all the work that he's been doing. There's a quirk of our petition scheme here, that if a petition gets submitted at the wrong part of the year, it could actually be months until it's actually heard. And that's what's happened here, because I think members may have noticed that the petition has over 1,500 signatures, but it's going through a process of less than 1,500 signatures, because it's the quickest way to get action. And one of the things I think the council needs to consider is how we can better adapt the petition scheme in the future, because if it's not working and we're having to find different routes to get petitions in front of members quickly, then it needs to be updated. And I think what this process has led is that this issue should be being talked about at Cabinet in the future, and it's not. And one of the things that, and I think the leader may wish to sort of explain himself, but one of the things we flagged up is that this petition has come here, it was too late to change the process, but I'm hoping that this can be picked up by Cabinet in the future, because there is an opportunity to utilise that space and have something for the residents of all of Thanet to use. So, yeah, I will close my comments there, but thank you very much, June, for bringing the petition.
Thank you, Councillor Scobie. Item agenda 5B. Sorry. Ah.
Well, I didn't know how many more people were going to wish to speak on this important item, Chair. Just to say that obviously I absolutely endorse the aims of the petition, and I think we all know the administration has been working towards delivering a better solution for Jackie Baker's for some time, and I Councillor Alban and the officers are credit for that, and also the new ward councillors for Northwood, who are doing a great job and working with the residents. We are going to deliver for the residents of Northwood, and more importantly, we're going to deliver for all the residents of Thanet and the residents of Ramsgate. So I would like a report to come back to Cabinet in due course, as it would have done if this petition had gone through the scheme in the normal way, explaining exactly what's happening at Jackie Baker's, so that members can scrutinise. And I will give a commitment that that report will come. Thank you.
Thank you. Vice Chair would like to say a few words.
Thank you, Chair. Never have I been so more grateful and privileged to represent the Northwood ward where Jackie Baker's is. I was brought up there, actually, so it means quite a great deal to me. But from the very first meeting with Chris and June, it was clear that they were absolutely passionate about their community. The facilities at Jackie Baker's are miserable, to say the least. The pitches and surrounding areas are dreadful. But with the will and determination of such residents as Chris and June, they remain impressive, more than that, motivational, more than that, encouraging. And this is what cooperation looks like, not only between the councillors and the residents, but it seems to be cross-party, which is brilliant. This is what purposeful engagement looks like, and this is what this council can deliver, starting with Jackie Baker's.
Thank you. Agenda item 5B, Northdown Park petition. The council's response to the petition is outlined in the report before members. Do members have any comments?
Councillor Cupp.
Councillor Cupp.
Thank you, Chair. And I just wanted to say how pleased I was to see the supportive comments from the Council, and I think it's going to be incredibly important and really good for the area. I would just also like to say that I believe, as much as this will be fantastic for the local community, I do hope that necessary funding will be allocated to it to ensure that not just the generations now, but future generations can also reap the benefits of this. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Cupp. Item agenda 6. No, no more. Councillor Orban.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I thank Councillor Cupp for his comments on this, and I think it's the same. We do need to ensure, in the current circumstances that this country finds itself in, with the cost of living crisis, etc., that our parks and open spaces are good enough for our residents to use on a daily basis, and that's something I think that we all want, and we will all contribute towards. And certainly for me, I will do all that I can to ensure that our parks and open spaces are what our residents want. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Orban. Councillor Manners.
Yeah. I just wanted to say, as the one of the councillors for Cliftonville East, that Northdown Park is a really important green open space in the ward. It's extremely popular. I was there yesterday afternoon, and there were probably 30 or 40 people using the play area. But the general area around there reflects really badly on the district and on the council. There is obviously neglect. We do have problems with antisocial behaviour, and with the graffiti and the neglect that's so obvious, it doesn't send a great message. So I welcome the council's response to this and the idea that we will now be refurbishing that pavilion. And I think, this is not the biggest asset in Thanet. This isn't the Winter Gardens. But all eyes will be on the council to make sure that they do deliver on this and get the pavilion and the surrounding area up to an acceptable standard. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Manners.
Councillor Duckworth. Councillor Duckworth. Duckworth.
Yeah. Councillor Duckworth, please. I wonder what
yes, as Cabinet Member for Property, I was very pleased to be shown round some of the bits of Northdown Park that people don't always see, and there's a lot of community work going, as with Jackie Baker's, there's a lot of community work going on. So I'd like to thank Mr Manclark for sending in the petition.
Thank you, Thank you, Councillor Duckworth.
That's it. Yeah.
That's it? Right. Item agenda 6, questions from the press and public. There have been 3 questions received from the press and public in accordance with council procedure number 13. Please note that only the questionnaire respondent are permitted to speak on the question. Could the questionnaire please only state the name of the cabinet member to whom they are questioned is to be put, and read out the exact wording of the question that they submitted to the council. Right, so it's agenda item 6A. Question number 1 from the member of the public regarding Arlington Arcade. I would please to welcome Mr Lucy to the meeting. Could you please make your way to the microphone?
Is he not here? Okay. So we'll just say he's not here, so you'll get an answer in writing.
Right, we'll just move on then.
But you can just say that Mr Lucy, you'll get a response in writing.
Right, so Mr Lucy will get a response in writing. Question number 2 from the member of the public regarding environmental agency pollution risk alerts. I am pleased to welcome Ms Bailey to our meeting. Could you please make your way to the microphone?
Good evening. My question's to Councillor Orban. I'll get my glasses on. The Environment Agency pollution risk alerts were issued at Viking Bay over several days at the very height of the season. TDC put up warning notices and the RNLI flew red flags and ordered people out of the sea over at Hanoi, which caused some alarm. These widely reported alerts had a seriously detrimental effect on local businesses and on the wider reputation of Broadstairs. According to the EA website, pollution risk forecasts are made daily based on measurements of rain, tide, time, sunlight and wind, while the seawater is only tested weekly. Do we know the accuracy of these forecasts? Are they ever confirmed by retrospective testing? Is this arrangement between TDC and the Environment Agency optional? If it is optional, what is the rationale for signing up? How long is the agreement for, and will it be reviewed? If it's not optional, is there anything that we can do to mitigate the adverse effects on tourism and local businesses? Thank you.
Thank you, Ms Bailey. I call upon Councillor Orban to respond.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Thank you, Ms Bailey, for your question. The objective of the pollution risk forecast system is to alert beach users to the potential for temporarily increased bacteria levels in bathing waters. The Council displays notices to advise that a PRF, that's the pollution risk forecast, is in place, and this enables bathers to avoid times or locations where the risk of pollution is higher than normal and where health risk from bathing may be higher than the annual classification suggests. It is important to note that this is advice against bathing. This season, the RNLI chose to fly a red flag on Viking Bay in response to pollution risk forecasts, but they did not order members of the public out of the sea. PRFs are not directly linked to storm discharge notifications and are not informed by a water quality test. The forecast is generated by a model which considers weather, rainfall and tidal conditions in order to make a prediction. High rainfall is known to affect water quality on a temporary basis, mainly as a result of surface water runoff. There is no sampling undertaken to verify pollution risk forecasts. However, routine compliance samples that indicate elevated bacteria levels taken during short-term pollution may be excluded or disregarded from the annual clarifications, provided that the signs have been correctly displayed to alert potential bathers of the PRE in place. In some circumstances, the PRF scheme can therefore help to maintain the annual bathing water classification. The bathing water classification is an important qualifying criteria for Blue Flag and Seaside Awards. There were more PRFs issued during July and August this year than in previous years. This was directly linked to the unseasonal weather at the time. We understand the concerns of local businesses who may be impacted by poor weather during the summer season and the issuing of PRFs. Officers have therefore committed to engaging with the Environment Agency over the winter months to seek a review of how the PRF system is applied at Viking Bay and consider the Council's participation in the scheme. This may also include working with the RNLI to review the use of red flags during the PRF and consider other ways of communicating the warning to beach users. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Right. Question number 3 from the member of the public regarding the local plan. I'm pleased to welcome Mrs Brown to the meeting. Could you please make your way to the microphone?
Good evening. My question is for Councillor Everett, and it's around affordable housing infrastructure and 106 agreements. If developers are asked to fund the full cost of the North Thanet Link Road and they say it is unviable to provide the agreed affordable housing on developments as set out in the local plan, there will be no benefit to the residents of Thanet. Gaining affordable and social housing for the district was the only advantage of allowing these developments. The mass development on some of the very best agricultural land in the country will be gone forever, and it will only be for the good of other local authorities, people wishing to move to the area, and private investors. Local people will end up in a worse situation with all the infrastructure problems that entails. And my question is, the current local plan is written in a way that allows this to happen. Does TDC propose to address this in the local plan review to ensure this is not the outcome? Thank you.
Thank you, Ms Brown. Where are we? Right. I call upon the leader to respond, please.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Mrs Brown, for your question. Kent County Council are progressing a bid under the Department for Transport Main Road Network Fund to support the delivery of the North Thanet Link, a key part of the inner circuit proposed through the current local plan. The bid is now one of only 2 priority schemes in Kent supported by Transport for the South East, and KCC have received funding from the Department for Transport to develop the scheme to the next stage. If the bid is successful, it would reduce those costs for the relevant developers and enable more contributions to a range of other planning applications, including affordable housing. However, if the bid is not successful, then the site developers will have to fund the provision of the scheme. Either way, the council, as the local planning authority, is required to meet the housing needs for the district as identified through the government's housing standard method. This is based on population change in the district over the planned period and is designed to meet a range of existing and future housing needs. And this is the primary benefit of new housing. This includes people already living in the district, including new households forming, for example, young people leaving the family home to set up their own home, and it also includes people who move into the district. Planning for housing for people moving into the area is not only required by government guidance, it's also important for local people because it prevents them, and particularly younger people on lower incomes, from being squeezed out of the local housing market. More affordable housing is the first priority of this administration. Government guidance supports the provision of affordable housing and key infrastructure through development contributions, whether financial or in kind on site. However, the guidance is also clear that in setting requirements for development contributions, local planning authorities cannot impose a level of costs which effectively renders development sites unviable and prevents housing from being delivered. Thus, the local plan was itself subject to a high-level viability appraisal, and planning applications may also be accompanied by viability assessments that are independently assessed and verified. Where viability can be demonstrated to be an issue, then a decision has to be made about the priority and balance of Section 106 contributions to be provided. The clause in Local Plan Policy SP23 that the requirement on housing developments for 30% affordable housing may be reduced if meeting them would demonstrably make the proposed development unviable is in line with government guidance, as was confirmed by the local plan examination inspectors. In terms of the local plan review, we've been clear that we want the power to reject applications on the grounds of protecting our agricultural land. That's a cross-party view. As an administration, we've also asked government to help us in terms of the existing local plan. And this week, I've received some correspondence from the Department of Levelling Up, Housing and Communities, which seems to make clear that the Secretary of State will not do that. I will be putting this correspondence in the public domain in the next few days so that residents can see for themselves exactly what the government has to say about it. Thank you.
Thank you, Leader. Agenda item 7 and questions for the member of the council. 16 questions have been received from members of the council Please note that the time allowed for consideration of questions from members shall not exceed 30 minutes. However, I am happy to allow the balance of the 30-minute public question session to this one allow the more questions to be answered. If we still cannot complete the questions in the time, and outstanding questions will receive an answer in writing.
We have 48 minutes. 48 minutes.
So we have 48 minutes. Question number 1 from a member regarding use of glyphosate. I call upon Councillor Wing.
I think this question is to Councillor Alban. I think it's always you, I'm sorry. How many litres of weed killer containing glyphosate were used by TDC in the last 4 years, 2019, 2020, 2021 and 2022? And where was this applied? For example, around parks, playgrounds, buildings, etc. And why are we still using this out in our communities, giving residents little or no indication of its use, or indeed any choice to avoid if it's being applied near them? When the International Agency for Research on Cancer classes glyphosate as a probable carcinogenic to humans, an increasing number of councils of countries and councils within the UK have banned it in favour of alternative methods.
Thank you, Councillor Wing. I call upon Councillor Alban to respond.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, thank you, Councillor Wing. It wouldn't be the same without a question from you at Council. So to answer your question, approximately 90 litres of glyphosate have been used by the Council in each of the last 4 years. Legally enforceable conditions of use are imposed on the way products can be applied to ensure the public are not exposed to levels of pesticides that would harm health or have unacceptable effects on the environment. Application is via spot treatment only. It is never sprayed openly and is not used in playgrounds, along the seafront, around trees, in flower beds or around shrubs and hedges. If at this point, Chair, if I could just say that if you've seen anybody spraying and whizzing a spray around, as I have, it's Kent County Council and not Thanet District Council. Herbicide containing glyphosate. Oh, sorry, I've just done that bit. Right. Glyphosate remains approved for use in the UK until at least 2025. The Health and Safety Executive notes that the responsible use of pesticides in amenity areas as part of an integrated programme of control can help deliver sustainable benefits for society. These include management of conservation areas, invasive species and flood risks, access to high quality sporting facilities and safe public spaces, for example by preventing weed growth on hard surfaces creating trip hazards, industrial sites and transport infrastructure. Now that's the end of the answer to your question, but what I can also advise you, which you don't know, is that since we have been elected, we have been considering the use of glyphosates, and we have suspended the use of glyphosates. Well, I never expected a round of applause tonight, Chair. We have looked previously at alternatives. The alternatives do not do the job. They are not good enough. So, if we continue and do not use glyphosate anymore, the issues will be from the residents. We all know that residents will complain more about the state of the weeds. We haven't got the resources to go and hand pull them up. So that's the answer to questions. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Alban. So, Councillor Wing, do you have a supplementary question?
Could Could I just clarify? First of all, I'd like to thank Thanet District Council because I put the same question to KCC and they don't know how many litres they're using in Thanet, which is pretty scary. And I find quite shocking. They've just devolved the power to the spraying company. First of all, I'd like to ask, it's the dormant season, so have we suspended glyphosate use because it's the dormant season? And if we go back to using glyphosate, please, will this council pledge to actually informing residents where they're using it, so that if those residents decide, the research on glyphosate is very in the balance, but, you know, I can choose to go in a room where there are smokers or not. I can't choose to not walk my dog on the cliff top, like happened on the Western Undercliff when there was glyphosate being sprayed by TDC. And I think residents would like that choice. They'd like to know where the glyphosates are being used and make that choice to avoid the areas. Thank you.
Right. Okay, is that it? Thank you. Yes, I'm just making sure the lady's finished. Yes. I call upon Councillor Alban to respond.
Thank you, Chair. To answer your questions, Councillor Wing, yeah, it's dormant season. We don't use it in the winter. It's not used. And one of the things that we have discussed, because obviously it was whether we were going to continue using it, how we use it or not, was that one of the things that we asked the officers to do is to put signs up as to where glyphosate was sprayed. However, that's not an issue at the moment, so, but should we continue, we will let you know, we'll let all members know, and signs will go up, but I'm quite sure, I think we will try and find alternatives. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Alban. Right, agenda item 7B, question number 2 from the member regarding judicial review of Manston Airport. I call upon Councillor Worrow.
Hello, good evening and thank you, Chair. Will the leader welcome the clarity with which Mr Justice Dove confirmed that Mr Justice Lane was correct in determining in the High Court that Jenny Dawes had no arguable case for the judicial review of the Manston Airport DCO?
Thank you, Councillor Worrow. I call upon the leader to respond.
I don't think Councillor Worrow's asked the question in full that he's put on the paper. I don't know if you'd like a reply to the full question or just to the bit that he's put.
Thank you, Chairman, for the opportunity to do that, and I do apologise, yeah. And will the Chairman tell us what action he is going to take in order to ensure that the cargo hub works in the interests of Thanet's residents? Thank you.
Thank you. Would you like to respond now, Leader?
Thank you, Councillor Worrow, and I'm sure you'd like to hear the full response that I've got for you and not just a discussion about the legal process. I think you've slightly misunderstood the legal process, if I'm honest. It wasn't the job of Mr Justice Dove to decide whether Jenny Dawes had an arguable case. It was his job to decide the merits of the case. That's the decision he actually reached. As for clarity, well, we've been waiting for clarity for a very long time. I don't think we're quite there yet, but I think the delays in the process have been a cause of frustration to the Council's local review process, and a final decision would be welcome. But there is still a further route to appeal, and until the legal processes have been completed, there is a level of uncertainty. I'm not going to talk in those terms. I'm going to tell you what I think. So, once the legal processes have concluded, and if the DCO stands at the end of them, the Council will work with River Oak Strategic Partners to consider all of the outstanding planning requirements within the DCO that have been reserved for the Council to determine. I just want to say that 9 years of inaction at Manston have been a lost opportunity for the whole of Thanet. Whichever side of the debate you've been on, because our economy needs growth, and growth could have been delivered at Manston by one solution or the other. The fact that we've had neither has been no benefit to the community. The uncertainty has been a blight on Ramsgate, because Ramsgate is principally the area affected by the flight path. But it's North Thanet that suffered most from the decision to protect the airport in the local plan, and in particular, in July 2018, this council moved 2,500 homes in the local plan from the airport, largely onto agricultural land. 1,600 of those were to the rural areas surrounding Westgate and Birchington. That's in the council minutes and anybody can see it. The Labour group at the time, which was very small, did not support that proposal. Carbon emissions quite obviously respect no boundaries, and they are an issue and will continue to be. What I do want to say tonight is this administration will respect the outcome of the legal process, and we will put the whole of Thanet first, as we would do in every decision that we make. After all, Labour councillors represent almost every part of it now. Thank you.
Councillor Worrow, do you have supplementary?
I do, Chair.
Thank you. Thank you for that. Councillor Everett, under the leadership of Clive Hart and then Iris Johnson, you and myself stood together in support of Manston Airport. And in that same spirit, I ask you tonight, will you once again publicly declare your support for Manston Airport? Yes or no?
Well, I have followed your political career closely, Councillor Worrow. And you have, of course, represented a number of different parties over time. I think you're on the fourth one that you've tried to stand for election for, or sat for, I don't know.
Did you get elected without a rosette that's red? I don't think so.
Probably not, but I'm proud to be a member of the Labour Party, so I don't, and I'm consistent about being a member of the Labour Party, so I don't change.
You couldn't get elected on your personality.
Don't let him do that.
I did not stand on a manifesto supporting the airport in 2015. I don't know what you were doing, but I didn't. I think that the whole issue of the electors of Thanet casting their votes for and against the airport has been massively overstated by all sides. Let's be clear, the Conservative group ran on virtually nothing else in the local elections, and they lost. They lost seats and they lost votes. But I don't think that that was about the airport. I think that was about their government. And I don't think that Councillor Piper came seventh. Your former leader in the Thanet Independent Group and the biggest airport advocate that there is, I don't think he came seventh because he was campaigning for the airport. I think he came seventh because there were better options on the ballot paper. What I will say to the council, and I promise the council, I may have a view on this issue, and it may not be the view of some members opposite and some members of the public, but as leader I have a responsibility, and I intend to discharge that responsibility in a proper way.
Thank you, Leader. Right, agenda item 7C, question number 3 from a member regarding the reopening of Manston Airport. I call upon Councillor Pugh.
Thank you, Chair. Clearly it's going to be a long night, isn't it? I don't really want to repeat what's already been said, but my question is very similar to Councillor Worrow's, if a little bit more clear that I've always supported the airport. With the recent outcome of the Manston Airport Judicial Review announced, will this administration finally support the reopening of the airport?
Called upon the Leader to respond.
Well, I could refer Councillor Pugh to the answer to my previous question. I think I'll add a little bit, which is to say that what this decision does is establishes the principle, assuming it goes forward, and I think it will, it establishes the principle of reopening Manston Airport. What it doesn't do is prove its viability, because that isn't the job of the Secretary of State or the Minister, and it wasn't the job of the judges. And actually, if you read the reports and you read all the decisions, there's a considerable area of doubt about its viability. Some people have an almost religious faith in everything that River Oaks strategic partners say. The Conservative leaflets, which I've referred to before, spoke of a £500 million investment and a potential for 23,000 jobs, which sounds very exciting. The only thing I want to know is where these 23,000 people are going to live, because presumably it's going to be in the fields of rural Thanet, because there isn't room for them in the towns. What we've heard from so many people is an act of faith that River Oak can deliver. If they get the final legal permission, let's see. It won't be this council that stops the airport being viable. But personally, I remain agnostic on that.
Thank you, Leader. Councillor Pugh, do you have a supplementary question?
I do, Chair, and I thank the Leader for his response, albeit it wasn't the response that I was particularly hoping for. But there it goes. I can always live and dream, Councillor Everett. No, but thank you for your response. My supplementary question focuses on, and particularly as you've said about River Oaks strategic partners and the information that may or may not be out in the public domain. I've got a few questions. Will the Leader commit to, in an open and transparent way, to having River Oak in to present their proposals for the airport to all councillors, whether that be at full council or in a members' briefing, so that all members, and members of the public as well, can ensure that they have the facts and the information as it is? And also, will the Leader confirm, particularly in comments I believe he made on ITV News or BBC South East, one of them, it certainly wasn't GB News, I know that for a fact. Will the Leader confirm what he meant by certain planning hurdles or issues with planning that still maybe need to be resolved in? Because I'd like to think that the Leader wasn't referring to any action by Labour members of the Planning Committee to stop planning permissions being granted for structures and buildings on the airport site. Particularly as the Planning Committee is supposed to be non-political. And people are supposed to make decisions of their own. Thank you.
Now. Thank you. Call upon the Leader to respond.
I don't think you were listening carefully enough. I mean, I think I got about 15 seconds on BBC South East, and you never know which bit of the comments they're actually going to use. But I certainly didn't talk about the planning process. What I said that there are legal hurdles, and there are legal hurdles. They need approval from the Civil Aviation Authority, and they need lots of other technical approvals around the site. And he knows that as well as I do. So it's a bit disingenuous to pretend that I'm talking about the planning process. It's not up to me what the Planning Committee do. If matters go before the Planning Committee, it's a matter for them. But I'm absolutely convinced that my colleagues will behave with integrity and in an appropriate way, because that's the way they will always behave during this council, or they won't be in my group. I can tell Councillor Pugh, if he's going to listen, I can tell him that I wrote to Tony Freudman on September the 29th, asking him to meet senior officers and myself so we could discuss the way forward and how we could work together. Mr. Freudman has agreed to do that, and I look forward to that conversation in the near future. I'm very happy to say that as part of that, I will talk to Mr. Freedman about him coming and talking to members of this council, all members of this council, so they can ask whatever questions they like. Because it would be ridiculous not to do that. Thank you.
Thank you, Leader. Agenda item 7D, question number 4 from member regarding the restoration of passenger services at Manston Airport. I call upon Councillor Dennis.
Point of order. It's John's question. It's Councillor Dennis's question, Chair.
Thank you, Chair. My question is similar to the others. Will the Leader confirm his support for the airport as they seek to restore passenger service as soon as possible? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Dennis. Call upon the Leader to respond.
Thank you. I'm surprised Councillor Dennis isn't aware. The DCO application applied for consent to primarily establish a cargo hub at Manston Airport with some provision for passenger services. Once the legal processes have concluded, and if the DCO stands, the Council will work with RSP to consider all the outstanding planning requirements within the DCO that have been reserved for the Council to determine. As for whether there will be passenger flights and when they'll be, I think that's principally a matter for River Oaks strategic partners and will depend on the market, but I wouldn't hold your breath. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Dennis, have you got a supplementary? Agenda item 7E, question number 5 from a member regarding Walker's construction. I call upon Councillor Bambridge.
Thank you, Chair. My question's for the leader. You'll be pleased to know it's not on Manston Airport, but it is not far. Very close by, yeah. So Walker's Construction recently closed the B2050 at Manston for several weeks during the recent school holidays. The consequences of this were as follows. The owners of Manston Golf Club and their Children's Activity Centre, Rascal Bay, lost 60% of their expected revenue. Chaos ensued as drivers used Spratling Street, Spratling Lane and Preston Road as uncontrolled rat runs. Pedestrians were put at risk because no footpath arrangements were made to protect them from the huge increase in vehicular traffic during the road closure. Stagecoach suspended their bus service through Manston Village, leaving many people who depend on public transport totally isolated. In view of all of this, can the leader inform me of what arrangements have TDC made to lobby KCC Highways and Highways England to ensure that this chaos is not allowed to happen again?
Thank you. I call upon the leader to respond.
Thank you, Councillor Bainbridge. I have every sympathy with the businesses and residents who were affected by the recent Hayne Road roadworks, and although less of a problem to me than it was to them, I have shared the frustration at times, not least with the fact that I can't turn right into Newington and go and visit my residents down there. So it is a problem. Just for information, Highways England was replaced by National Highways in 2021, and it manages motorway and major A roads like the A2, so I don't think lobbying them would actually achieve anything. Kent County Council is the highway authority, and they are responsible for coordinating and planning and scheduling of all work on the publicly maintainable highway. KCC operate a permit scheme with the following objectives: to carry out roadworks more effectively, limiting disruption, to improve the consideration of people who live near or travel through roadworks, and to promote safer roadworks. This council receives advance notification of streetworks and road closures for information. This ensures that impacts on services such as household waste collections can be mitigated, but it is notification, not consultation. This council has no highway experts and has no expertise to share on the subject. I understand that the works on the A256 Hayne Road centred around the Viking roundabout are an improvement scheme undertaken in accordance with a Section 278 agreement between the developer and the Highway Authority. Such works are essential for the long-term improvement and capacity of our road network. The safety of temporary traffic management is a core consideration of the contractor and the Highway Authority when works are planned, and any concerns in this regard should be raised directly with KCC at the time they are observed. Disruption to residents and businesses is another important factor when planning works, but where business representatives consider that they've been negatively impacted by temporary works or road closure, they may choose to raise their concerns with the Highway Authority and or the contractor. However, this is not a matter for the District Council.
Councillor Bambridge, do you have a supplementary question?
Yes, I do. Thank you, Chair. Can I thank the leader for his reply? But in doing so, may I point out that the sheer number of housing projects currently under construction or being planned will inevitably require either traffic light controls or even road closures, again stretching well into the future. In view of this, can I ask the leader if he will agree to the creation of a cross-party working group of elected members to monitor and manage all future requests from house builders to stop the flow of the road traffic here in Thanet, so we have some sort of phased response? Thank you.
Thank you. Can I call upon the leader to respond?
I'm not sure how that would work, Councillor Bainbridge, within our existing scheme of governance, but I'm certainly happy to talk to officers about it. Can I just say that the County Council does have its own councillors, as you're aware, and I think that the first port of call when lobbying the County Council should be those county councillors, and it's been pointed out to me that one of them, Councillor Shonk, is in the audience tonight, so I'm sure he's hearing what you're saying and he'll take back those messages to Kent County Council and get you some better action. The other thing that we can possibly do is use the Joint Transport Board. Members will know that that is not proceeding in a very satisfactory way and hasn't been for some time, and I know that the new chair, Councillor Matterface, is very keen to do something about that and make sure that it functions more effectively. So perhaps we can do something through that route. We will certainly continue to lobby KCC on that point. Thank you.
Thank you, leader. Agenda item 7F, question number 6 from the member regarding farmland and local plan review. I call upon Councillor Braywood.
Thank you, Chair. The inclusion of Greenfield in the current local plan is negatively impacting local tenant farmers and farmers/landowners alike. Their livelihoods rely on being able to continuously farm year on year. Parcelling off sections for development reduces viability of the remaining farmland, forcing them to consider other ways of maintaining their income, including turning farmland into solar installations. This decision is a direct result of the local plan, including land for development on our grades 1, 2 and 3 agricultural land. My question, does this administration accept this, and what steps are being taken to ensure no further farmland is included in the local plan review, even though it may be offered up in the latest call for sites? Thank you.
Thank you. I call upon the leader to respond.
Thank you for your question, Councillor Braywood. As the local planning authority, the council is required to meet the housing needs of the district as identified through the government's housing standard method. In the 2006 local plan, the council had to meet a lower housing target and was able to allocate on largely brownfield sites. In the 5 years following the adoption of the plan, over 95% of completions were on brownfield land. Partly as a result of the successful brownfield first approach taken in that plan, the district does not now have a significant stock of available brownfield sites, other than the airport, and the 2020 plan had to accommodate a much higher housing requirement. As part of the local plan process, the council carried out an extensive brownfield land search. In the absence of sufficient alternative sites to meet the housing requirements, the council had to consider the use of farmland. The council only allocates sites that have been submitted to it through the call for sites process by landowners and their land planning agents, who sometimes already have option agreements with the developers and development agents. The scale of housing that needs to be met and the extent to which agricultural land can be protected from development are largely determined by government guidance in the National Planning Policy Framework and Planning Practice Guidance. In March 2023, the Council made comments in response to the Government's consultation on the Levelling Up and Regeneration Bill and proposed revisions to the National Planning Policy Framework. That response has been published on the Council's website, and as I've said before, the Labour Group, through my colleague Councillor Whitehead, made its own submissions which said very similar things. In the Council's response, it argued that the current housing standard method used by the Government to determine housing targets requires urgent review and questioned the evidence for the Government's annual housing target. The Council also argued that proper protection should be provided in the National Planning Policy Framework for all best and most versatile farmland, pointing out that in Thanet, Grade 1 agricultural land comprises some 40% of the district's area. Unfortunately, both the NPPF amendments and the review of inputs to the housing standard method have been delayed by the Government until 2024. The extent to which local planning authorities can protect farmland in future will be determined by whatever changes the Government makes to the current guidance. And as I said earlier, I have a letter from the Department which I will share and which will shed some light on that. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Braywood, do you have a supplementary?
Yes, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Everett, for your detailed response. Has TDC been in touch with local farmers to ask if there are any derelict farm buildings that are no longer used that could be renovated to provide more housing in the district? And if they haven't, could they please do so?
Call upon the leader to respond.
Not to my knowledge, but I think it's probably unrealistic to think that that would provide a significant amount of houses. It's not a course of action that I would rule out. It's something we can give consideration to. Thank you.
Agenda item 7G, question number 7 from a member regarding the Edgar Road site being occupied by Rise. I call on Councillor Bayford.
Okay. My question is not for Councillor Everett, it's for Councillor Whitehead. As we do not currently, I'm sorry, it's not word for word. Thank you. we do not currently have a communal residence for people registered as homeless, I'd like to know when the Edgar Road site is likely to be ready for occupation by RISE. Thank you.
Thank you. Called upon Councillor Whitehead to respond.
Thank you, Councillor Bayford. Rough sleeping and homelessness provision is of great importance to me, principally because one of my main reasons for first considering becoming a councillor was my time spent volunteering at the Thanet Winter Shelter and my belief that we needed to have year-round, 24/7 and multi-agency provision. I've always believed that it's our duty as a council to provide long-term, one-site provision. Our first communal residence came about the last time I was Cabinet Member for Housing during the pandemic, and unfortunately ended due to the fact that we didn't own the building and were only leasing it until it was brought back into its usual usage. Across this period, our communal accommodation typically housed between 20 to 25 people per night in individual rooms with access to common areas and multi-agency support. When this lease ended in February 2023, 6 residents still required support into individual accommodation. From those 6, 4 went into temporary accommodation and 2 went into RISE supported accommodation. The benefits of this one-site model are clear, especially for those with complex needs. Through having this communal base and outreach, we were the first council in Kent to successfully offer and administer COVID vaccinations to those rough sleeping or known to RISE, as well as offering medical and dental services on site. The next step to take was to ensure that these services had a council-owned home, not subject to external lease or instability of provision linked to that. These services are provided via our RISE service that provides support for people that are at risk of rough sleeping in the district. Rough sleeping is a complex and highly individual matter, and the premise of our RISE team functions so well precisely because it recognises the importance of combined services, multi-agency approaches, and genuine connection and understanding. These processes are often not short-term, and building trust and belief in the ability of services to help and individuals' ability to empower themselves within their own tenancies is vital. This includes outreach services to provide support for people sleeping rough, as well as help with finding and managing a home and with preventing eviction. We have completed the acquisition of a large site in Edgar Road, Margate, with the long-term intention of converting it into self-contained homes for affordable rent. We are currently using it as our first ever council-owned home for RISE, providing not only accommodation, but also essential on-site services and multi-agency support for residents, to provide homes whilst building confidence and ability to maintain long-term individual tenancies. This is a huge step forward for us and an important and necessary investment in the health and well-being of our residents and community. It will increase the supply of available accommodation for homeless people. The Edgar Road site will provide 16 units of independent accommodation within a communal building, providing access to support as well as more independence and privacy than a shelter model. We are currently completing essential health and safety works in the building, and as soon as these are completed, the service will be able to use the building. We anticipate residencies will begin from the 4th of November. Unfortunately, as we have discussed many times in this chamber, funding allocations are not continuous, which makes long-term rough sleeping and homelessness planning challenging for all councils. The RISE service currently has government funding through until March 2025 and will be able to use the building in Edgar Road throughout this period. Housing and homelessness is an absolute priority for this administration, as demonstrated by our commitment to increase our provision of social housing and in-house temporary accommodation for local residents, and we will continue to bid and do our absolute best to secure funding for residents in need of this service. As soon as Edgar Road is available, which, as stated, should be by the 4th of November, we will have sufficient accommodation to accommodate every known rough sleeper in Thanet. All those currently accepting support from RISE will be able to access our first ever council-owned multi-agency rough sleeping provision, which is an exceptional achievement, and I thank RISE and housing officers for all of their work on this project. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Bath, would you have a supplementary question?
Yes, please. Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Whitehead. I'm very pleased to hear that the Edgar Road site is soon going to be available. I think it's very, very important. In the meanwhile, and possibly after the funding is lost, it must be difficult for the multi-agency RISE staff to meet the needs of the homeless in different locations. Are they able to provide their full services to as many people in need in this way? Thank you.
RISE work in many, many different ways. So outreach is a huge part of what they do, because to those who are often unable to either access or accept support initially, building those relationships is very, very important. Bringing people to a point where they can manage tenancies is very important. So the communal model, as I said at the beginning of the first question, I do believe provides the best possible outcome. It allows us to deliver all of our services in one place, and it allows us to deliver a huge amount of support and ongoing support. That isn't to diminish at all the outreach support that we do, both to bring people into accommodation, it being separate and individual accommodation at the moment, or the ongoing work that happens after people leave the centre. I think, considering the number of discussions that we've had around this subject, I think we're both of the same mind in terms of the importance of communal provision. It's definitely the best way forward, and I very much look forward to not only the facility being open, but also hopefully being able to guarantee its future in some way from this point forward. I know that we've discussed previously in briefings doing visits once the health and safety checks are completed, and would be very, very pleased for you to come. But I would also like to offer any interested councillors a similar opportunity to visit and see what we are doing, because I think it's very important that people are involved in all parts of housing, because this is a very complex area, and understanding how we provide and why this support is so important is something that's very valuable for everyone. So if there are councillors who would be interested in looking at the building when it is safe for us to do so, please just let me know, and I'm happily arrange for that to happen. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Whitehead. Agenda item 7H, question number 8 from a member regarding the local plan. I call upon Councillor Cupp.
Thank you, Chair. My question's for the leader. When the local plan, which is a legal document, states that developers have to supply at least 30% affordable homes and land for schools and doctors' surgeries, how could developers not deliver this due to it not being viable? In the interest of local communities and our residents, how can we allow developers to contradict our local plan? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I call upon the leader to respond.
Well, the simple answer to that, Councillor Cupp, is that we don't. The local plan states in Policy SP23 that the requirement on housing developments of more than 10 dwellings to provide 30% as affordable housing will only be reduced if meeting them would demonstrably make the proposed development unviable. If demonstrated and independently verified, it is not contradictory to allow a reduction. I'm sure Councillor Cupp is aware of a proposal at the Labour Party conference this week which would strengthen the resources that Council have to support them on these viability assessments and challenge the developers who are quite often able to put more resources than councils into these discussions. Of course, we'll have to have a Labour government before we can implement that. I can tell him that there are no cases where land required through planning policy for school and doctor's surgeries has not been provided.
Right, thank you, leader. Can I, Councillor Cupp, can I have a supplementary question?
Absolutely. Thank you, Leader, for your response to that question, and thank you, Chair. I was also noted that the Labour leader, Keir Starmer, said in a recent radio interview that he was going to ignore Labour NIMBYism and ignore Labour local councillors if they were against the local developments. But we'll gloss over that, so let's hope we don't get a Labour government. But to my question, if developers do not fulfil their promises to deliver vital amenities for our residents, then we will see an increase in individuals' carbon footprints due to them travelling across the district to simply get a doctor's appointment. So what safeguards and conditions are you willing to implement onto any future planning application that comes forward to ensure that developers have to deliver for the best of Thanet? Thank you.
Call upon the leader to respond.
Yeah, Councillor Cupp, you'll be aware that one of the challenges of the planning system is that these developers don't actually deliver the schools and doctor's surgeries, and they're not able to. They provide the land. And it's actually the responsibilities of other bodies, including the Health Service, Kent County Council and others, to provide these facilities, and that's part of the problem. So we can force them to make the contributions that they're required to make, but we can't actually deliver those services. And if the doctors aren't out there because they haven't been trained, or the schools aren't out there because there aren't the teachers to run them, then there's not much we can do to the planning, to the developers to actually change that situation. It's a massive problem. Let's be honest about it, and we're not going to resolve it here this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Leader. Agenda item 7I or 71. Question number 9 for members regarding structural surveys of heritage sites. I call upon Councillor Mann.
Thank you, Chair. I believe this question's for Councillor Alban. Keep him busy this evening. We cannot afford to see more of our heritage assets allowed to fall into disrepair, and with that in mind, Walpole Bay tidal pool comes to mind. When, please, was the last structural survey made of the chalk reef foundation? I believe that's called the toe, the actual chalk reef where the concrete sits. And also, when was the last structural survey of the pointing of the concrete blocks? Are these investigations part of the biannual inspection process? And if so, can members please see the most recent survey report? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Manners. Called upon Councillor Alban to respond.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Councillor Manners, for your question. You're quite right. We can't see a lot of our heritage allowed to fall into disrepair. Maybe your group should have done more when they were in power. However, I'm just getting my own back. To answer your question, Councillor Manners, the Walpole Bay tidal pool is inspected twice a year by the technical services team as part of a programme of routine coastal inspections. The autumn 2023 coast inspection is being carried out this week, and the observations from this report can be shared for information upon request. Defects identified through routine coastal inspections are categorised on a priority basis for repair. Most repair work is funded via revenue budget. However, a capital coast protection scheme is planned in 2024 for Walpole Bay, which will include works to the tidal pool. The schedule of works will include tow protection from undermining through erosion of the chalk reef, pointing works and concrete repair. This scheme will be funded via a mixture of Environment Agency grant and local levy funding. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Manners, do you have a supplementary question?
Well, just on the issue with the previous administration, I find it's best to drive a car looking out the front of the car rather than the rear view mirror. No, I mean, I'm very pleased if there is going to be a proper structural survey. I'd hope that might also include a look at the condition of the concrete and the rebar within the concrete. There are some studies out there that suggest that concrete has a useful life of 100 or so years, and the tidal pool is 90 years old. And I think, like a lot of the people who swim there regularly, I'm very, very keen. I'm sure everybody here is keen to see that asset protected as best we're able. Thank you.
Called upon Councillor Alban to respond.
Chair, I wasn't sure if there was a question there or not, but yeah, I'm with you on that. Our officers, our officers will do a thorough inspection, and they will take the necessary action. Thank you, Chair.
Right, thank you. So, right. Agenda item 7J, question number 10 from the member regarding the George Osborne two-child benefit cap. I've read that several times and it puzzles me about that. I call upon Councillor Austin.
Thank you, Chair. No need to be puzzled, I think. George Osborne's two-child benefit cap, introduced in 2015, has been described by a leading academic as the worst social security policy ever. Far from increasing employment, it's left families poorer, with families of as many as 1 in 4 children in our poorest constituencies at least £3,000 worse off. What information do we have about the impact of this cap on families in Thanet? What measures can we take within our own district council remit to reduce its negative effects at a time when so many families are struggling with cost of living increases? I think I've been advised that this question should go to the leader.
Well, thank you. I call upon the leader to respond.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Austin, for your question. This is a long one, I'm afraid. There are a number of recent reports from welfare agencies, research and policy units that have analysed the two-child limit and concluded that it has had a negative effect on families. Of note is the fact that the policy has been examined up to Supreme Court level and found not to be in breach of the European Convention on Human Rights. It's important to note that even if the two-child limit were to be abolished, if that would not, of itself, simply hand back lost benefit to those families caught by it. The overall national benefit cap could come into play for some of those families, if their income from all benefits per annum were to reach £22,020 for families outside London. In terms of understanding the impact of this policy locally, we only have limited knowledge as a district council. In our housing benefit and council tax support caseload, we know how many children are in each family. Approximately 830 families have more than 2 children. What we cannot know is how many families receive no welfare support because of the limit, i.e. where they would have an entitlement to state welfare support after taking into account their income if there was no limit on the number of children. For housing benefit, we cannot amend the rules locally. The regulations apply nationally, so the two-child limit has applied since 2017. Some residents who have been in receipt of housing benefit since before 2017 may not be impacted by the two-child limit rule. On council tax support, the council can set its own rules. The scheme in place at Thanet is based on the traditional council tax benefit rules, which are inherently linked to housing benefit rules. As a result, the local scheme also contains a two-child limit in the majority of cases. However, where a resident is in receipt of council tax support, the council could choose to increase the generosity of the council tax support scheme and allow payment for more than 2 children, but that would come at a cost. Every additional pound of council tax support is £1 less council tax collected. It's not, however, £1 less council tax for this council, because it would result in decreased revenue for council tax preceptors such as Kent County Council, who, as we all know, get the vast majority of the council tax anyway. Any changes to the council tax scheme would require public consultation, and a scheme can only be amended from the 1st of April each year. Schemes cannot be amended in year. So thus far, this administration has had no opportunity to do that. Thanet District Council does have funding to help local people on low incomes. The Household Support Fund is used to assist people, and for 2023, Thanet's budget is £521,000. The Household Support Fund Tranche 4 is currently being allocated to agencies across Thanet to allow families who are struggling with the cost of living to apply for support. This includes support for household items, food, increased energy costs and rent arrears, which are a result of the cost of living increases. In addition, discretionary housing payments can provide additional interim support for housing-related costs, particularly where households have experienced an income shock. The Council also provides support to its own tenants through our dedicated financial wellbeing team. This support includes identifying financially struggling households, and there are currently 455 children living in tenants' families affected by the two-child limit and 143 households affected by the benefit cap. providing benefits and money advice to help manage finances and maximise entitlement, and making referrals to other specialist support services. Finally, you'll be aware that we have committed to the delivery of at least 400 affordable rental homes over 4 years, and we are delivering those at pace. This programme will deliver a range of size of rented homes, including larger homes for families with more than 2 children.
Thank you, Leader. Call upon Councillor Austin to respond, to ask the supplementary.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Leader, for that very detailed response. That's much appreciated. Abolishing the two-child cap is estimated to be likely to cost 1.3 billion a year, but it would lift 250,000 children out of poverty and a further 850,000 out of extreme poverty, according to End Child Poverty and other campaigners. Will the Leader write to the Prime Minister and ask him to revoke the cap? And will he write to the Leader of the Opposition and ask if he will consider doing that if he should become Prime Minister in the future? Thank you.
Thank you. I'll call upon the Leader to respond.
Well, I'd like to see the two-child limit abolished. I'm not sure that Rishi Sunak is going to be hugely influenced by a letter that he received from me on the subject. I shall certainly continue to lobby my colleagues in the Labour Party. And as I said, I was in Liverpool this week doing that on various things. I'd like to see some real changes in the benefit system, but what I also recognise is that this has to be done in the round within the finances that is available in the current situation, and with an understanding of the full context of the impacts that could result from those changes. And I think too often we pull on one straw and it has an effect which hasn't been anticipated. So certainly I would like to go down this route, and I think that the path to achieving that is to elect a Labour government. And Councillor Austin, you can help us doing that by voting for Polly Billington in Thanet.
Right, thank you, Leader. Right, so members, we are ceasing question time. Anybody that's got an outstanding question, it will be answered in writing. So we're now carrying on to agenda item 8, notice of motion. Okay? One notice of motion of received in accordance with Council Procedure Rule 3. Please note the time allowed for consideration of motions shall not exceed 30 minutes. I ask members to be succinct and as possible, whatever that is. Right, agenda item 8A, motion regarding pausing new planning permission for major applications. Members may recall that a motion from Councillor Garner was received at the last meeting of Council. The motion was deferred to this meeting in order to report detailing the financial and legal implications of agreeing the motion could be brought forward to members. That report is now before members for them to consider. As Council has already agreed to debate the motion, I will invite Councillor Garner to present his petition, and then I will open the item for debate. At the end of the debate, I will take a vote to see if the Council adopts or rejects that motion. A call upon Councillor Garner.
Thank you, and I'll be as succulent as I can. This motion, which we now have the opportunity to debate, is to pause the granting of new planning permissions for builds of more than 10 dwellings, so as to allow for a review into the impacts the current house building programme is having across Thanet. I'd like to thank officers who've worked over the last couple of months to produce the comprehensive report that's been produced and to inform this debate, which I'll refer to. Before I outline why I think we should be agreeing this motion, I want to clarify a couple of things that this motion isn't proposing. Firstly, it isn't proposing that all building work in Thanet should stop, as much as some here might like that to be the case. As the report helpfully points out, there are currently 748 units with planning permission approved that developers could be getting on with. Secondly, it also isn't proposing
that work on planning applications, which are yet to be decided, should be stopped. As also pointed out in the report, there are currently 26 active major planning applications for housing developments, some of which have been active for years rather than months. As I've made clear previously, I'm proposing this motion as a result of conversations with residents both during the election campaign and after about their concerns about the impacts that the house building programme is having on our infrastructure. And I'm sure we've all had similar conversations. We're all familiar with the concerns about Southern Water's infrastructure, so I won't go into detail on that. We're also familiar with other related concerns, some of which have been mentioned earlier, because they also impact our residents, both current and future residents, that is. Impacts to our already struggling GP services, our hospital, our schools, and of course our roads network. As we are reminded in the report, the provision of these services is not our responsibility. I believe, however, that it is our responsibility to call out vociferously when these services aren't delivered, and I look forward to the data relating to the last 3 years being published soon, as promised in the report, which would dovetail nicely into the review we would conduct if this motion were approved. The report has made a start on other aspects of the review too. It provides useful information on the number of empty homes across the district, 1,551 classed as long-term empty. When you add in the number of second homes and the number of Airbnbs, the figure approaches 5,000. It also provides useful information about the affordable homes which have been built in the 3 years from 2019 to 22, which is 382, which I suspect is a lot less than 30% of the total built on major developments during that period. Many of the risks raised by officers in this report about us doing this review, I'm just finishing, are predicted on this course of action being unreasonable behaviour. I do not believe it is at all unreasonable for us to act on our residents' concerns. So I ask you to support the motion and let's get on with the review. Thank you.
Right, so it's open to members' debate, so if you can... It's on.
Just speak into the microphone. Just speak into the microphone.
Can you hear me now? Bit of a malfunction somewhere. You've heard me all the way through. Right, thank you. Right, so it's open to members to debate. So,
Councillor Everett first.
right, so Nick will take the names and tell me. Councillor Everett. Councillor Everett.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Garner, for bringing your motion to the Council. The administration absolutely recognises the level of public concern about the scale and location of planned development in Thanet, even though it was set out for a full consultation process during the adoption of the local plan going back to 2018. But we understand that people don't pay that much attention to the detail.
Can you speak up? You've got the book in front of the microphone.
Apologies, what I'm trying to do is avoid losing my voice, which is why I'm speaking slightly softly, but I'll do my best. Okay.
Listen.
Anyway, what I'm saying is it's not enough for the council to follow proper processes. It's important to explain to residents why things happen and what the council can and cannot do at this stage. That's why we as an administration felt it was important to debate this motion and to give an opportunity for the reality to be set out by officers, not just by politicians, in black and white. I want to thank the officers for what is a comprehensive report. And I have to say that no responsible council could pass the motion in front of it tonight. Firstly, it asks for a pause in the consideration of major applications. these applications would simply be decided elsewhere on the same policy basis without local democratic input. The council would face legal costs and lose application fees, which incidentally help to fund the staff who decide all the other planning applications. None of the things Councillor Garner wants to happen during a pause require a pause. They are subjects we deal with all the time, and they can be explored through the local plan cabinet advisory group and, if necessary, through overview and scrutiny. What's more, at the end of this pause, supposing it happened, nothing whatsoever would have changed, because local policy can only be amended by the local plan update, which is a statutory process taking years. What's more, a pause will imperil the affordable housing that we desperately need in this district, including the council's own building programme. The officer's report sets out responses to the 6 questions posed in the motion, so I'm not going to go through that again. But the motion produced the report, and to that extent it has served a purpose. I do feel, however, there's a risk that it has misled residents about what the council can and cannot do. Voting for it tonight, when in knowing it cannot be delivered, is not serious politics. It is simply performance, and our residents deserve better than that.
Thank you, Leader. I call upon Councillor Pugh.
Thank you, Chair. I mean, I agree with the Leader. Residents do deserve better, but unfortunately they've got a Labour administration, so that's the way it works. Well, Leader, I'd do a lot better than you if I was running this administration. Leader, we did a hell of a lot trying to fight the housing numbers, and former Leader of this council wrote repeatedly to the Secretary of State and was working very hard to try and do what's best for residents. Look, I think we're here tonight, and this is why we're all councillors, because we're here to do what's best for residents. It is best for residents to, I believe, and I know that the Conservative group are behind me in supporting Councillor Garner's motion, it is in the best interest of residents to support this motion, to pause any new major consents across the aisle. It won't stop any that unfortunately have already been consented from being built. But in my mind, it's concerning particularly, not just in the report, but the risks that are associated with supporting and passing this motion. One of them says that the council is unable, and I quote from it, planning risk, the council is unable to demonstrate a 5-year housing supply, and therefore we're at risk of applications being successful that are not included within or allocated within our local plan. That's been happening for some time. We've lost planning appeals, particularly in my old ward in Moncton. We've lost planning appeals for considerable developments across the district. Supporting this motion won't make that worse. It's already happening now. So I think it's really important that all members, and this shouldn't be political, that all members support this motion and ensure that actually, yeah, we do what's right for residents. Thank you.
Thank you. Call upon Councillor Fellows.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you to Councillor Garner and the Greens for bringing this debate this evening. I will be supporting this motion. A number of us have wanted a moratorium on house building and large planning applications for some time. Also looking at ways we can call in the local plan to have the numbers re-looked at. Every request has been met with a no. It's not possible. So this is a chance for us to draw breath, step back and take stock of what us as councillors and as a council is allowed to happen here in Thanet. Health services are maxed out, our roads are constantly clogged, our water and sewage system are in meltdown. It's clearly an unsustainable position and it's definitely unsafe. No one can argue these points. The local plan is certainly creating more issues than it solves, and that's for sure. And to be clear, I did not vote for this local plan. My village of Birchington is under siege from developers with one planning application alone, and there are more. It's for 1,600 houses on grade 1 agricultural farmland. Let's think about that number, 1,600, and that won't be the end of it. And then you can clearly see the destruction that is coming for our village life forever. It's absolute madness, and it's tragic for all that live here. So if you want the best of Thanet, then you will also support Councillor Garner's motion this evening. The residents of Thanet are watching how we treat this motion this evening, and I know how the residents of Birchington will expect me to vote. So I ask all members here this evening, will you all be doing how you expect, the residents expect you to vote? Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Call upon Councillor Bright.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Councillor Garner. I think, and thank you, Mr Porter, for your report. None of us want to see houses built on greenfield. I think we're all agreed on that, ideally. As has already been discussed, the brownfield policy and the local plan excluded the biggest brownfield site that we've got, unfortunately, but it is what it is. Well, okay, I'll get on with it. The fact is, what's best for our residents is to have safe, ecologically sound homes. We need new houses. There is a housing crisis in this country. That's why there are 1,600 people in housing need in Thanet. Now, when I bought my first home, the average house price was 3 times the average salary. 3 times. That was quite easy. It was fine. We did all right. Now it's 11 times. Now, if you think that's a decent future for our children and for our young people, then I'm going to have to disagree with you. And we talk about the risks. Now, for me, this is purely about gesture politics. There is a huge risk of this derogation of duty. It's a statutory duty of this council to determine planning applications. And if we don't do it, we are failing our voters and our residents. And this Labour group got elected for a reason. And finally, the most terrifying thing is the prospect of a Secretary of State, a Conservative Secretary of State, the Conservatives who are responsible for those crumbling medical services, those crumbling school buildings, and a National Health Service on its knees, and no infrastructure around water. That's your fault.
It is.
So I don't want to hand over any planning decisions to a secretary. We can laugh and joke, but there's 1,600 people who are homeless in Thanet, and there are no medical services, all the things you've just pointed out. The Conservatives have run this country into the ground, and we will support this, we will reject this motion because we need the houses and we need a Labour government, and we need to hand over the powers of determination to these ecological, economical and environmental vandals would be an absolute derogation of this council's duty. Thank you.
Call upon Councillor Scott.
Okay. Thank you, Chair. Okay, and thank you to Councillor Garner for bringing forward this motion. I myself, who live in a ward which is West Skelton Sea, is actually facing issues with over potentially 2,000 houses being built on prime agricultural land. I mean, we can obviously labour the point about how we do actually need our agricultural land due to obviously just economic situations. You can get political about that, but I want to focus more on the actual buildings themselves. I mean, there's been a lot of posts on social media from new residents who have actually moved into Thanet and now live in these newly large built developments about the problems of shoddy builds and finishes to their homes. Some of the local contractors have actually decided not to take on any new build works because of the problems and issues that they've had with them. And looking at the quality of new building stock, for example, we have a recent case with Sunningdown Housing Development, who are currently in the process of winding up their company, leaving developments in St Nicholas and Minster unfinished due to building defective properties, and now will be left uninhabitable for loads of people. I mean, for me personally, I just feel that we're kind of living in an island that is at the moment struggling with infrastructure, actual movement of people. For example, I think we're actually having less people having the desire to actually move into Thanet, so we don't actually have the desire to build all this housing. So I do support Mike Garner with his motion that we do need to look into this and certainly put a pause on any new builds, and definitely these properties that are currently popping up now that are just not sustainable. They're not affordable. Half of them don't even reach any demographics. I mean, some people are saying if you build more houses, it will bring the housing market down. It hasn't. It's just made the housing market collapse. So that's my stance on it. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Will Scobie.
Thank you, Chair. I think there needs to be some reality added to this debate. I mean, there's been a lot of anger, frustration already coming out across people. And I think that's in some ways good in local politics to have that passion. But when we're talking about planning and when we're talking about strategy, these decisions were made years ago. These decisions, the die has been cast on these things. And what is coming out very, very clearly in the report is that trying to do this now is simply not possible. And I think, you know, representing Northwood, a lot of this development is going to be around Hayne, and we have spent time as a local councillors trying to work out how to engage with the community there who are seeing their whole area change. And it's very, very difficult because people want to see action. But the reality is, as a ward councillor, I cannot stand there and promise them that I can do anything about this application because these strategic decisions were made by a council previously. And I think the history of Thanet is one of us looking for easy solutions. So the root of the problems we're looking at now, it's not anybody's fault necessarily in here. No one person is saying this has to happen. This is what happens when you have over a decade of political drift and a hung council in Thanet. You have had leaders changing, corporate plan priorities changing, as we heard earlier with the questions to cabinet members from the public and from members, the local plan itself, moving large amounts of housing between. That lack of strategy is what we're seeing here. And, you know, we have to have that reality in this debate. If you want to stop this from happening, this motion is not the way to do this. You know, charitably, this is people trying to do the right thing. You know, uncharitably, it's, as the leader said, gesture politics. But this is not the way to bring about change. We have to engage in this process of the local plan review, and as residents, we will listen to you, but it has to follow the rules. And there is something that always sticks in my head whenever we have debates like this. If I look back over the last 12 years, when I was last on the council over a decade ago, we had the issue of live animal exports in the port. And there was a real feeling in the council, we must do something about it. We must stop this, it's awful. And the council did try and do something about it, but it did something that legally it couldn't, and it ended up paying out large amounts of money in compensation. Something that is still sitting in reports recently and impacting our reserves. We cannot put future services at the council at risk by doing things that we do not have the power to do. The report makes it, thank you very much. The report makes it very, very clear this is not something that we can do without impact. It will clearly impact our future powers and have budgetary impact. However, the views that people are being put forward on this, I do agree with, but we've got to put this through a different process. So I will not be supporting the motion, even though I do sympathise with residents and the councillors that brought it forward. But the way to change this is to have political stability and not have motions like this being adopted by the council.
Well, thank you. I call upon Councillor Austin.
There will never be enough housing. It's about time you realise that.
Thank you, Chair.
Thanet will be destroyed.
Thank you.
Councillor Austin.
Thank you.
Sorry. A, Councillor Austin is trying to speak. B, my son has been present at council meetings since he was 5. He's never disrupted and he's never interrupted. Please extend him the same courtesy. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Whitehead. I'm pleased to be following on from Councillor Scobie because he said he wanted to inject an element of reality, and I think that's what we need to do. We've heard about the fire and brimstone that's going to fall on our heads if we take 3 months to have a look at the impact of the housing that is proposed. 3 months. That won't land in Michael Gove's inbox in 3 months. Nobody's going to come and take control of us in 3 months. Nobody is going to have the time or the concern in the government that, as the leader highlighted earlier, is in a certain degree of chaos, to be interested in what we're doing in Thanet. This is being talked up as a potential disaster. It's not. It's a sensible, reasonable measure for a local authority to take, which is facing its services being overwhelmed. That means no disrespect at all to Bob or to his officers who've put this information together, but I do think it's been put together on the basis of an assumption that we're going to somehow stop all planning and send the planning officers home for a holiday. That's not what we're suggesting. We're suggesting a short pause, a very short pause, in considering new large applications. I noticed that there is a lot of emphasis in this report on loss of democratic control, and I am also concerned about democratic control, but it feels to me like, in view of the fact that we all know that residents are deeply concerned about these issues, that we are taking an undemocratic stance if we don't actually consider taking a short break to consider these matters in a bit more detail. Thank you.
Thank you. Can I call on Councillor Cupp, please?
Thank you, Chair. Well, it's been interesting to hear what what people have been talking about so far, and I just want to quickly, firstly, say that the only people that are making this motion political are the Labour Party, because this is absolutely not. We know what are affecting our families, our residents considerably, non-stop. And this is a time for the council to put party politics to one side and come together to deliver for the residents and listen to the residents. And what I will have to say, Councillor Bright, is you calling us Conservative. What I will say is that I am a councillor for Birchington before I am a Conservative member. That is what I will say to that. This is our opportunity to actually make a change, have a chance to be a leading council to say this is what we did and take a step, yes, into a little bit of the unknown, but as has already been pointed out, this is a very minor delay. And actually, a very minor delay could mean that it changes the face of potentially the local plan and make sure that we listen to the residents that elect us here to sit here in this chamber.
I'm listening to all the residents. That's what I mean.
I'm not talking to you, Councillor Bright, but thank you.
Can we have a bit of debate? No calling across the chamber, please.
Thank you, Chair. What I would just finally like to say is that I will be supporting this motion tonight for my residents of Birchington. But I am, of course, a believer of making sure that we do have housing in Thanet, but I think it needs to be in the right way. I did not vote for the local plan, and I think we need to make sure that we review the local plan in a better way, and I think that this motion allows us to do that to a degree. So thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I call upon Councillor Whitehead, please.
Oddly, on one point, I find myself in agreement with Councillor Cupp in that this should not be a political issue, and yet it has very, very much been made one. No?
Oh, shut up.
So, to go to the report, the existence of a 5-year housing land supply is a material consideration in determining planning applications for housing on sites that are not allocated in the local plan for housing. And conversely, not having a 5-year housing land supply makes it more difficult for the council to resist applications for housing on non-allocated sites. Currently, the council cannot demonstrate a 5-year supply. Therefore, the proposed motion would make it more difficult for the council to resist the development of unallocated sites, as housing applications on allocated sites within the local plan would be delayed or left undetermined. This would give greater weight to housing applications on unallocated sites at appeal, as the council would not be able to demonstrate it is attempting to provide a 5-year supply, potentially leading to development in undesirable areas of the district, including the Green Wedge and countryside. The point is that the motion as it stands, which I would happily have discussed at any point, but did not come to me before this point, wouldn't allow a pause. We would pause, but central government wouldn't, because all those planning applications would be referred to central government. And every developer who is already looking at Thanet as a prime area would watch this meeting and then make sure that they got applications in order to increase their chances of using land that we have tried to protect. This motion would not allow a pause. It's that simple. And the housing limit in relation to developments of 10 or above, we're effectively saying we would be allowing the expensive housing that we don't want, but we wouldn't be allowing affordable housing, which we do want, because we can only enforce that. We can only enforce that for developments of 10 or above. So the only housing we would be providing during this pause is housing we don't want on sites that we don't want. So I've seen some brilliant work in this chamber. I've seen some exemplary cross-party work, and I'm thoroughly disappointed that what's been presented here is being deliberately misrepresented so it can look like you're fighting for a pause, when you know that what will happen is central government, who have given us the rules and regulations that are binding us and forcing us to develop, can take that power out of our hands entirely and force it. This motion would not give a pause. It would give more housing. Thank you.
Thank you. Call upon Councillor Davis.
Thank you, Chair. At least I'll get to speak on this item because there's been a lot of comments. However, we are first and foremost elected by the electorate, and we are here to represent you, as Councillor Cupp said, before our party affiliations. And let me assure you that every single colleague of mine on this side of the chamber has your interests at heart. We are traumatised by what is going on, and if I can actually be heard, what has caused this? Let's get context on this. The local plan is a subject of great discussion here. However, if we go back to pre-2015 to a Labour-led administration, the local plan was ignored by successive Labour leaders and administrations. It was then ignored and not delivered by the failed UKIP administration. The Conservative administration came in and put the local plan into place with due haste, which is a matter of record. It was then, because of the delays and the lack of protection for all of us caused by administrations on the other side of the chamber, we are vulnerable. There's a lot of waffle about Manston and brownfield sites, the local plan and neighbourhood plans, which Ramsgate in particular has been failed by an individual for the last 10 years. Support this council, support a break. We need a fire break. We need to send a robust message across the chamber and to Parliament that this community has had enough. We're sick and tired of being sick and tired, and I, for one, will be supporting this motion.
Thank you. Councillor Elvin.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I'm sorry people are getting irate. It's not a right thing to do on a debate like that.
Just passionate.
Yeah, I quite enjoyed it, Councillor Davis. You know, it was fun. I think the basis of this is, as has been said already, we're all agreed. No one wants our Grade 1, Grade 2, Grade 3 agricultural land to be built on. That's everybody in this room, I guess, right? Okay. Who sold the land? Who wants the land to be built on? The farmers. Don't hear you shouting at the farmers. The farmers put the land up. The farmers put the land up. Yeah, well, that's what I'm saying. Why aren't they shouting at them? Now, the facts of the matter is...
Nationalise the land.
Pardon?
Nationalise the land.
Yeah, we'll nationalise it, yeah. The facts of the matter are that has been said in relation to planning applications. If you get a planning application for 11 houses, that can be done. This is under your motion. That can't be done. Sorry, that can't be done. Why? You've not stated an amount of houses. We're all moving about 1,600 houses. But you've got someone who could come in with a planning application for 11 houses, and you're saying they can't put that in. That is what you're after. The end of the day, this council has to carry out a statutory duty, means it has to determine planning applications once they're submitted. If it doesn't do that within an 8-week period, the developer, the householder, whoever it is who's made the application, goes to government for non-determination. We've seen what's happened with non-determinations. We've all fought on the planning committee against major developments where we've said no to major developments. Councillor Garner, Councillor Austin, me, Councillor Bayford and others last year. We fought those because they wouldn't put 30% affordable housing. They wouldn't build it. They came back. We say, oh, we want 10%. We want 15%. We can't afford it. What happened to that? It went to appeal and they won the appeal. We lost the appeal and we didn't actually get charges against the council because it was a fair way that we actually did it. But if this happens, if this pause happens, and what's going to happen in 3 months? What you expect to achieve in 3 months? You won't achieve anything in 3 months.
We'll make a change, won't it?
It won't make any changes at all. There'll be no changes in 3 months. We've got to do, we have a statutory duty as a council to carry out the planning applications and to determine them. Otherwise it will all go to government. It'll all go to government and we'll end up having costs against us for non-determination.
Right. We've gone past the time limit now, so there'll be no more debating it.
No, that's not fair.
It may not be fair, but that's what it's going to be.
This is an important issue. If I can stay
Huh?
I'd like to
Let's have 30 minutes, that's it. Let's have 30 minutes. Let's have 30 minutes, that's it. What it is,
Can I repeat it again? You've run out of time. No, they don't know me.
It's within your remit. This is not fair.
Right, Councillor Garner, will you sum up, please?
If you are a minority party, we sit here and we listen to these two groups of people having a Barney. Common sense is debate. So far, we
Come on now, we've got a lot to get through tonight. There's been a good debate on it on both sides, and we're going to move on. Councillor Garner, will you please sum up? Councillor Garner, will you sum up, please? The debate is over. Please.
And because we're humans, you're going to see.
It looks like we're going up here all night then. I'm waiting for Councillor Garner to sum up, and we're not moving on until it happens.
No to autocracy. Just a few minutes.
You know, I actually want to bring some calmness to the situation. Because you're not allowing me to speak. So far, we've just listened to...
Can I make a suggestion, please?
You can sum up, please. When we started this debate, you had 30 minutes. I read it out. That applies to all of you.
Can I make a suggestion, please? If I'm right, I mean, some of the things I was going to say was about gesture politics and taking the anger out of stuff, and I believe I do have 5 minutes. So there is 5 minutes left for this debate to go on. So I'm quite happy to allow Councillor Wing to make her point. She had
she's not even next. No.
Wasting time. You've had 30 minutes. If you don't, we'll be here all night. So please, Councillor.
Well, I'm sorry. Well, I know there are one or two people I think who did have their hand up quite early on that haven't been seen, and I'm not. And I don't think
Garner,
that's anybody's
what
fault.
we're going to do now is move to the votes, right? So if you don't sum up, you'd lose that right.
Right. My summing up, which I would have been happy to allow Councillor Wing to do for me, and anyone else who wasn't able to speak, is that it's a shame that all those who want to speak aren't able to speak. I've lost my track now a little bit from what I was going to say. I have heard, as Councillor Wing has said, we've heard quite a lot of I'll call it banter, a bit of gesturing politics from one side to the other. It has got a bit angry. I didn't want to be angry. I haven't raised this motion because of gesture politics at all. I'm quite openly saying I raised this motion because we all heard from our residents. We've all heard, not just the people here, but the people who we've spoken to during the election campaign, the people who we speak to since the election campaign. They've all asked us to do this. I was going to say that yes, we've heard about the risks that have been outlined in the report. They are risks. They aren't what's going to happen. And I believe that the report does overplay some of the risks. I don't believe the Secretary of State is sitting there waiting to intervene in Thanet because we decide to not to pause approval of any planning applications. Not to pause work on any planning applications, just to pause approval on these major ones while we have this review. Even if there's been questions about, well, what is the point? What is the point of doing this review? Well, even if it is to show that we have listened to our residents, we have done a review, we've outlined what the problems are, and there are issues, there are major impacts that aren't outlined in the local plan that have happened, that we do need to outline and document. And we might, during that review, decide, well, look, these are the major detrimental impacts, and we do need to start lobbying further for changes to be made. But I'm going to leave it there. We've heard from one side, we've heard to the other. This isn't whatever you think, this isn't a political thing. This is because we've heard what people have had to say and we're acting on it. So we'll go and vote anyway.
Thank you, Councillor Garner. I will now move to the votes.
Chair.
Recorded vote.
No, hang on. So over 50% of the people in the council have to vote.
I'm just taking instruction.
So if over half the number of councillors here vote for a recorded vote, we will have a recorded vote.
So can we have a show of hands on a recorded vote, please?
So say it again.
Say it again, say it again.
You need 40%.
No,
50% of councillors to agree on a recorded vote. So, do you agree on a recorded vote?
Raise your hand. Raise your hand.
Yes, raise your hand.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, 32, 33, 34, 35, 36, 37, 38, 39, 40, 41, 42, 43, 44, 45, 46, 47, 48, 49, 50, 51, 52, 53, 54, 55, 56, 57, 58, 59, 60, 61, 62, 63, 64, 65, 66, 67, 68, 69, 70, 71, 72, 73, 74, 75, 76, 77, 78, 79, 80, 81, 82, 83, 84, 85, 86, 87, 88, 89, 90, 91, 92, 93, 94, 95, 96, 97, 98, 99, 100, 101, 102, 103, 104, 105, 106, 107, 108, 109, 110, 111, 112, 113, 114, 115, 116, 117, 118, 119, 120
And now against the recorded vote.
It's lost.
We are not going to have a recorded vote. Thank you. So, all those in favour of the motion, please raise your hand.
Can you repeat it? Please say it again.
All those in favour of the motion, please raise your hand.
Who's against?
All those against the motion.
That is, so the motion is lost.
Right, you can put your hands down.
Any abstentions? Any abstentions?
Any abstentions, please? Right. The motion is lost. Thank you. Agenda item 9, Leader's Report. I call upon the Leader.
Thank you, Chair. Happy to give my report if members are ready to listen to it. Even as the polls closed in May, this council was faced with news that the GMB had successfully balloted our waste collection staff to agree to take industrial action in pursuit of their 2023-24 pay claim. As we've seen elsewhere, bin strikes not only disrupt the service for residents, they damage public confidence in the council. Thanet is unique in East Kent in providing its service in-house, which means that staff benefit from local government terms and conditions, and also that what we pay them impacts across the council. I'm delighted, therefore, that last month we were able to reach an agreement that not only resolved the dispute with the GMB, but also enabled us to settle Unison's 2024-25 pay claim at an affordable level, giving us certainty for the budget process ahead. This was only achieved through the hard work of senior officers, and I'd like to thank everyone involved for enabling us to reach a solution without a single day of disruption for our residents. We have been working over the summer months to address a number of other legacy issues. Ramsgate has been without its weekly market since COVID, and promises that it would resume went unfulfilled. This is something we took a decision to act on in our first Cabinet meeting in June. The market went out to tender in August, and I'm delighted to confirm that we have now appointed an experienced operator to deliver it from April next year. It's a similar situation with the lifts in Ramsgate Royal Harbour car park, funding for which was already in the budget when the last Labour administration left office in June 2021. These have been out of action since COVID. Members from the last council will know that I raised this repeatedly with the previous Cabinet. Nothing happened. A tender for those works has now been issued, and I'm confident that we will soon have working lifts at Leopold Street again. In January 2022, Councillor Crittenden brought a motion to this council calling for a district-wide parking review. Cabinet agreed in April 2022 to carry it out. Guess what happened next? It was left to this administration to carry out the review some 18 months later. Now, those of us who've been involved in local government for a while know that there are always practical reasons for delay. It takes political will to get things done. But we cannot expect residents to have confidence in the Council's intentions for the future, such as Cabinet will set out in the draft corporate plan next week, if it hasn't delivered what it's promised in the past. And on the subject of promises, here's a key difference between the political parties going into May's election. Labour brought a modest proposal for additional street cleaning resources to the budget meeting in February. The Conservatives said there was no money for it and voted it down. We told voters in the election that we would introduce extra street cleaning in residential areas if elected, and we did, and within the adopted budget in late July. The staff that we deployed had collected 839 bags of litter and 1,231 bags of leaves at the last count. Members will be aware that we are now proposing to increase the street cleansing resource on a permanent basis in next year's budget, which will be a 26% uplift in staff. And this will make a difference, but we need to do more. More to improve our open spaces and more to tackle graffiti and fly tipping. All the parties that have led this council over the last 13 years have had to deal with shrinking resources, but things have gone too far. I think we have to be honest and say that the number of staff in these areas is a critical factor in what we can deliver. We've not been able to reach the standards our residents expect for some time, and we don't currently have enough money to put everything right. But our promise now is that we will make things better. And that includes working with the new Broadstairs and St Peter's Town Council on bringing Victoria Gardens back up to standard, because I know that's upset residents this year. We must also not lose sight of the hard work that does continue. This summer the Council installed 80 additional purple wheelie bins, 75 large waste bins and 30 mixed recycling bins in locations around the coast. This led to over 2,000 tonnes of waste and just over 30 tonnes of recycling being collected from coastal bins across the summer season. Bay inspectors handed out litter sacks to encourage beach users to manage their waste, and our dedicated beach crews were on duty every day from 6 AM to 8 PM, picking up litter and emptying bins. Beach toy collection points were a big success, allowing beach users to leave unwanted toys for others to enjoy. Coastal enforcement officers patrolled the coast 7 days a week. They took part in a successful multi-agency operation in August to combat the irresponsible use of jet skis, which was threatening wildlife around Pegwell Bay. As everyone knows, we had major challenges with the volume of seaweed, which saw us remove over 1,000 tonnes, and that did catch us out. I know that businesses at Viking Bay in particular were frustrated by the effects of pollution forecasts from the Environment Agency, which affected their trade. The state of our public toilets across the Isle is an ongoing concern, and another promise at the start of this year, which went unfulfilled, that work will be done to improve the external appearance of those at Broadstairs Harbour. This situation cannot continue, and it won't. Cabinet has asked officers for a programme of works to be prepared, and as soon as possible, I think in December at the Cabinet meeting, we will put that into the public domain, because our visitors and our residents deserve better. In the months ahead, we will continue to tackle long-standing issues. We will finally repair the access road to Hartsdown Leisure Centre and the TDC-owned section of Montefiore Avenue that leads to King George VI Park. And we will work with Ramsgate Town Council to resolve the issues with the Eastcliff lift. I am both excited by the proposals for additional council homes that Councillor Whitehead and the housing team are bringing forward, with another tranche on the agenda tonight, and troubled by the continuing pressures on temporary accommodation. I know that housing is working flat out to deliver for the people affected, but for those without a long-term solution, that will be little consolation. This administration will expand and accelerate the provision of our award-winning in-house temporary accommodation and end the need for out-of-area placements, saving every council taxpayer money. But it cannot be done immediately. And in the meantime, I want to acknowledge the hard and often stressful work being done by our officers, as well as the frustration of those placed out of area. I also want to congratulate our private sector housing team on winning the Kent Housing Group Award. Their work is vital, and it's great to see it being recognised. Last week I attended the engagement session at the Walpole Bay Hotel, which showcased the Margate Town deal plans for Walpole Bay and sought public feedback. I'm really looking forward to seeing how that element of the scheme progresses, and I know there was a good turnout of residents. And this follows the successful engagement session in Ramsgate in the summer. It's inevitable that as we work through the detail of these schemes, we have to make adjustments and alterations, not least because of inflation. The government has recognised this by including Thanet in a Pathfinder project, which will simplify reporting structures and enable more agile local decision making. I wrote to the Secretary of State at the Department of Levelling Up Housing Communities at the end of August, outlining the particular challenge of inflation. And for once, we got a quick and succinct response in under 3 weeks from the new Levelling Up Minister, Jacob Young. And the government isn't going to help. Despite that, I am confident that we will deliver the vast majority of projects that have been funded, and will shortly be going out to tender on the port operator for Ramsgate. I also want to mention the successful disposal of the Westbrook Loggia to Tracy Emin, which is a really good solution for that building, and I know a popular one locally. At the end of September, I attended the Violence Against Women and Girls conference organised by the Thanet Community Safety Partnership in Broadstairs. This was a really impressive event, and I was pleased to learn about the ways we're engaging with cutting-edge technology, including AI and virtual reality, to find innovative approaches to tackling this problem. This is a serious problem for our community, like others, and as the father of a daughter, I do have a personal perspective, but it affects us all. We should be proud of the work that is going on here. Kent Police were able to highlight a declining trend of offences as a result, and I hope the community safety team will share details of their good practice with members at a briefing before too long. Finally, we have begun the process of contributing to the district boundary review, which will come to full council with a proposal for a future number of councillors in December. Following completion of this process, some parish boundaries may need to be redrawn through a community governance review to reflect the new wards. I want to commit tonight to this council carrying out a community governance review for Margate. We have pledged recently to strengthen our relationship with town and parish councils across Thanet. Ramsgate, Broadstairs and Ramsgate, Broadstairs and Westgate already benefit from active and I may say well-led town councils. And I respect the contribution of the parish councils too. A town council for Margate is long overdue, and I know that the current charter trustees agree. This administration will enable that to happen in 2027 in line with the next set of parish and district elections.
Thank you, Leader. I called upon Councillor Pugh to comment on or ask questions in relationship to the Leader's report.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Councillor Everett, for your report. I'd like to thank you for advance sight of the report for today as well. Don't worry, I understand that the Labour Party conference is quite exciting. I'm glad to hear that you had a good time. I won't be throwing any glitter on you at any point, but I do have a yes to Manston badge if you'd like it. You're more than welcome to have it. I note the Leader's remarks on the resolution of the pay dispute with our waste collection staff. I'm delighted that this dispute has now been resolved, not least because I know that inflation is high and all of our staff deserve to be paid fairly. However, I think it is telling that we will later tonight have a proposal brought before us to raise our members' allowances by over 10% at a time when our staff will be seeing nowhere near the same increase. It is a rash decision, and I think it speaks volumes that this is a clear priority for this Labour administration. The Leader has spoken at great length about his administration getting things done. And I'll be honest, I'm somewhat relieved. Isn't it great to look at what we can all achieve when we have a brilliant team of senior officers who can work in a positive, open and transparent environment? I find it astonishing that the Leader has focused on recent events whilst neglecting to mention the 20 or so months of inaction under his previous administration. During that time, the previous Labour administration sat on its hands whilst a toxic culture persisted at this council. The Leader has assigned blame to the previous Conservative administration for inaction, when it was the Conservatives who worked incredibly hard to resolve the complex issues that this council face at a time when no one else would. Labour can now reap the benefits of our hard work, and I urge the Leader to now focus on the bigger picture. And so I ask, particularly with all of these new services and particularly new services that are being provided, how will these new services be funded? At a time when this council when we left this council with a sound budget, it appears that Labour are up to their old tricks again, spending money that they don't have and leaving the Conservatives to pick up the pieces. It's interesting to hear the Leader reference the considerable amount of seaweed that was cleared from our beaches this summer, particularly when the Labour group proposed in the previous budget before the last local elections to remove around about £45,000 from this specific budget. Again, the previous Conservative administration put a stop to that. So I'm delighted to see the leader reference a good position of their Conservative policy that is actually working. Whilst the leader's report was extensive, I think it's important to note what is missing. Any reference of the biggest opportunity for economic growth and employment opportunities that Thanet has seen for decades, Manston Airport, and I think that speaks volumes. Clearly, this administration has a long way to go, but it's not just about getting headlines, Chair. It's about doing the hard work to deliver for Thanet residents.
Thank you. I call upon the leader to respond.
Yes, thank you, Councillor Pugh, for your response. Allowances, we're going to talk about them later. I think we should just be clear that what you're talking about in terms of the GMB and Unison is an annual pay increase. What we're talking about in terms of members is the first increase for 10 years, in fact 11 years. I don't think the two things can be accurately compared. I absolutely agree with what you say about our senior officers. I think we've got a great team of senior officers and a growing team of senior officers. And, you know, I'm happy to acknowledge the part of the previous Conservative administration played in, for example, the appointment of the Chief Executive. I think it's been a great success. I'm delighted to work with him and I think we're doing good things together. If you want to talk about the previous Labour administration, you know, although you choose to overlook the fact that it took place almost entirely during COVID lockdowns. It was very difficult for the council to do things outside the council during that period. We did actually deliver for our residents a huge number of services and officers worked really hard. So there was a great deal of work during COVID and I think that was recognised externally as well as internally, which is one of the reasons the government wouldn't intervene in this council despite our senior management issues. And of course I did initiate all the processes that led to the changes in the senior management team, the formal processes which were necessary before the council could make the decisions. But I've never denigrated Councillor Ashby's role in that. She played her part. She knows that I think that and she knows what I did too. It's not necessary to divide on political terms on that. I think actually the Conservative group increased the budget by 19.6% last year. So I'm not quite sure what they're accusing us of. The budget is going to be up for examination over the coming months. We can talk about those figures then. Yeah, I certainly agree that we didn't have enough resource to remove seaweed, but the main problem was we didn't have anywhere that we could take it, and we didn't have an Environment Agency licence to remove any more. Don't think that Environment Agency licence was set under this administration, but I could be wrong. It was an exceptional year, and we need to do better. Manston Airport isn't in the report.
Thank you, Leader. I call upon Councillor Garner to comment or ask questions in relationship to the Leader's report.
Thank you, Chair. I'll start by thanking the Leader for early sight of his report and join him in thanking officers for the hard work they put in to reach a pay and conditions agreement with the GMB and Unison. He's mentioned several issues in this report which need to be urgently addressed, and our hard-working waste collection staff will be key to solving many of them, so it's right and proper that their claim was settled promptly and fairly. That you are committing to the Ramsgate market returning next April is excellent news for residents and businesses in the town who benefit from the increased footfall. Can you confirm that the market will be held in the town centre? We welcome your confidence that the lifts at the Leopold Street car park will soon be working again. Will you be aiming for them to be open in time for people to use when they visit the market when it opens next April? We also welcome the proposals for more council homes, which we'll hear more of later, and congratulate the private sector housing team on winning their award. We hope we'll be able to use our purchasing power with developers to ensure that the housing we're considering buying is properly insulated and incorporates sustainability features to help keep residents' bills down and to help save the planet. That the long overdue parking review is finally going to happen is also good news, although we would have liked to have seen more member involvement in setting the parameters of the tender. While this is an issue that affects the whole of Thanet, we know there are hotspots, especially in coastal areas like Kingsgate during the summer, and we look forward to being involved in both responding ourselves and promoting the consultation sessions to residents and businesses in our wards. There are a couple of areas you mentioned in your report which I'd like to focus on. Littering in our parks and on our streets, and the atrocious state of our public toilets.
There aren't easy fixes for these problems, and they can't be solved by TDC alone. But the changes the administration plans to implement need to be done in an open and transparent way so that residents, lots of whom already help through community groups, and one or two who are here this evening, can get involved and know about changes before they happen. This is currently isn't always the case. As an example, the Vincent Close Park in St Peters, which is very popular with dog walkers from both Ramsgate and Broadstairs, has over the last few years seen several residents from both towns get involved in litter picks and has become a popular community meeting point. So they were disappointed a few weeks ago when the dog poo bins along the tree-lined walkway were removed without any replacements, leaving only one bin in the park right next to the entrance to the playground for dog walkers to deposit their waste. As I said earlier, littering isn't an easy problem to fix, but a reduction in the number of litter bins and a reduction in the number of times they're emptied surely can't be part of the solution. And I use the above as an example as I have first-hand experience of the issues it's caused, but it's occurred in other parts of the town and across the district, which I'm sure a number of us here could recount. Doing something about the atrocious state of public toilets will certainly not be easy, but we agree that it is something that must be tackled urgently, and we're pleased to hear your commitment to do so. While public toilets need to be a facility open to everyone, all options need to be considered, including local business sponsorships and potentially charging to use them in some places. We've seen what can happen when public toilets are closed at busy times, and it's our residents who bear the brunt, having to clean up mess that no one should have to find in their front gardens or indeed their neighbourhood. We look forward to seeing the administration presenting a plan to ensure that our residents don't have to face these issues again next year. And finally, you've recognised the work done by Broadstairs and St Peters Town Council throughout your report, which is good to hear. Since the election, all of us on the Town Council, from across the political parties, have shown how it is actually possible to work hard together, to put together a strategy to make the town a cleaner, safer and kinder place to live and to visit. And we are looking forward to implementing that plan, with taking over the upkeep of the flower beds in Victoria Gardens from TDC near the top of that list. The more help you can give to get them licensed to the Town Council as soon as possible, the better it will be for everyone, so as we can get on with doing it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Call upon the leader to reply.
Thank you, Councillor Garner. Yes, I'm delighted to say that Ramsgate Market will be where Ramsgate Market always was. And why we ever had to have a discussion about putting it somewhere else, I have no idea. I'd be very disappointed if the lifts aren't in action by the time Ramsgate Market returns. These procurement processes are unpredictable, but I am pretty confident we're going to deliver that. Location and of bins and disappearing bins certainly is an issue. I think we've got a new head of service in that area. I'm sure he's going to get on top of that problem very soon, and we'll have better news in respect of it. And the public toilets we've covered off, we will be dealing with. There will be plenty of opportunity for involvement in the parking review. I don't think the parking review will be successful if we don't get engagement from councillors and residents. That's what it's always been about. And in respect of Broadstairs Town Council, yes, I know that you and others have been working closely with Councillor Bright and others on Broadstairs Town Council, and that there seems to be a real vibe there. I was really pleased to go along to a meeting there in the summer to hear from all the community groups about what they wanted from Broadstairs. There was a real sense of purpose and optimism, and I hope we can carry that forward and the TDC can contribute to that. Thanks.
Thank you, Leader. I call upon Councillor Worrow, please, for comment on or ask questions on the Leader's report.
Thank you, Chair. I wish to thank the Leader for acting on my call at the last council meeting when I called for street cleaners. It's actually quite flattering to see the Leader putting one of Thanet Independent's manifesto pledges into action. And with the good news about Manston Airport, we can now look forward to seeing yet another one of Thanet Independent's manifesto pledges put into practice. I would also like to congratulate the leader for not mentioning in his report some of the most important things that matter to the people of Thanet. The leader told us about his visit to the Walpole Bay Hotel in Cliftonville, but he very conveniently forgot to mention the Oval Bandstand project just down the road, which his administration withdrew £500,000 from. Oh, and I must congratulate the leader on not mentioning, wait for it, the Thanet Parkway station, or as Ramsgate KCC councillor Karen Considine calls it, a monstrous, dangerous white elephant. It speaks volumes when the Labour deputy leader at KCC doesn't even support Councillor Everett's position on such a major project. This administration is still very Ramsgate-centric. But I am, however, pleased to hear the leader talk about the good news that Tracy Emin has bought Westbrook Loggia, or as it's known to locals, Westbrook Caff. I'm sure Tracy won't mind me saying this, but I hope she cooks a better breakfast than she makes a bed. No, but on a more serious point, I think it's great for our area, and I wish her the best of luck. We need people like that. Okay, we're running out of time, so I'm going to hand back to the chair now for the leader's reply. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. A lot of questions there.
Thank you.
All upon the leader.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Warrow, for your comments. I've got to be honest, I wouldn't know what was in the Thanet Independence manifesto, or even that they had one, because I didn't notice them.
You're noticing us now, though.
Certainly the residents of Northwood didn't think much of the Thanet Independence manifesto when they voted Councillor Piper into 7th place. In terms of the Oval Bandstand, I'm very disappointed that that project has fallen by the wayside, and I would pay tribute to the officers who worked extremely hard to try and reach a solution whereby the people delivering it from Grass would sign the grant agreement, but it's quite clear that we can't proceed without. Somebody can't have £500,000 of public money if they're not prepared to sign the grant agreement. And that decision in the end was taken by the 151 officer. He's the appropriate person to take it. And I'm sure if you've got any queries about why that happened, he'd be happy to tell you why that wasn't the right thing to do. This mantra about us being Ramsgate-centric, well, we've got 4 Margate Charter trustees out of 6 cabinet members. Councillor Alban is the only member of Ramsgate Town Council on the cabinet. I must have extraordinarily disproportionate influence on behalf of my residents in Newington. Were that the case, I wouldn't apologise for it, but I intend to deliver for all areas of Thanet.
Thank you, Leader. Agenda item 10, report of the Chairman of the Overview and Scrutiny Panel. I call upon Councillor Fellows to present the report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll keep it brief as time is getting on. It's been a busy time for the Scrutiny Panel recently as we look to scrutinise all key decisions made by this Council. We currently have an ongoing scrutiny review underway, led excellently by Councillor Britcher, looking at the negative impacts of tourism within Thanet, and we look forward to that report in the new year. My full report is in this evening's agenda pack circulated to members, and I'm happy to take any questions and comments. Thank you.
Thank you. Do members have any comments? No? Thank you. Agenda item 11, adoption of the Westgate-on-Sea Neighbourhood Plan. I call upon the leader.
I'll keep this one short. I move that the Council make the Westgate-on-Sea Neighbourhood Plan.
I'll second that, Chair.
Right, seconded. Thank you. Right, agenda item 12, Annual Treasury Management Review 2022/23.
Thank you, Chair. This report summarises a backward look on our Treasury management activity for 2022-23. The figures remain provisional because our 21-22 and 22-23 accounts have not yet been audited, and therefore subject to change until the audit is completed. Firstly, I am pleased to report that all our activities operated by officers were within the limits agreed by members. Although there was a minor error by one of our financial providers, this was picked up very quickly and reported in our mid-year report to Council. The other key messages that I have summarised from the report are: the Council's gross debt, also called the borrowing position at 31st March 2023, was 19.9 million. The Council's underlying need to borrow to finance its capital expenditure, also called the capital financing requirement, was 52.2 million at 31st of March 23. Therefore, it can be reported that the Council has complied with its requirement to hold less gross debt than its CFR, which is the capital financing requirement. The maximum debt held by the Council during 2022-23 was 20.2 million, which was well within the statutory authorised limit of 96 million. At 31st of March 23, the Council's investment balance was 60.6 million. A marked reduction in general fund capital receipts over the last few years, which has implications for funding the future capital programme. I move the recommendations as contained within the report.
Can I have a seconder?
Councillor Duckworth. Councillor Duckworth.
Right, we've got Councillor Duckworth. Do members agree? Thank you. Agenda item 13, budget monitoring 2023/24. Will members please refer to the supplementary? I call upon Councillor Yates.
Thank you, Chair. The Council Constitution requires that supplementary budgets must be approved by Council. In other words, only Council can agree to the overall size of the budget for the year to be increased. The Q1 Budget Monitoring Report was received by Cabinet on 21st of September 23, within which Cabinet agreed for a number of additions to the budgets to be recommended for Council today for approval. The link to this Budget Monitoring Report is included for reference under the annex to this report. I move the recommendations contained within the report as set out, and these are that the Council approves the supplementary budgets for the 10k requirement for the legal system upgrade to be funded from reserves, as set out in section 2.1, the £154,000 identified in section 2.2 from the business rates growth reserve to fund the legal and procurement fees associated with port projects, and that the Council approves the supplementary capital budgets, numbers 1 to 7 inclusive, as set out in section 3 to this report. Thank you.
Thank you. Can I have a seconder?
Mr. Keane.
I'll second that.
Who we got? Stop. You've got one. Right. Right, item
Do we agree?
14.
No, do we agree? Do members agree?
Oh, right. Do members agree? Thank you. Agenda item 14, amending the Members' Allowance Scheme 2023/24. I call upon the leader.
Thank you, Chair. There is no good time to increase member allowances, but there's also a point where it ceases to be sensible to avoid doing so. The level of inflation over the last 18 months has been the highest in many years. Thanet's basic allowance of £4,570 a year is 25% lower than it would have been had inflation been applied since 2012-13. But over that period, no increases have been applied at all. In consequence, Thanet now has the lowest allowance of any authority. None of us is here for the money, whether that's the basic allowance or the special responsibility allowances, but it's unreasonable to expect people to give up so much of their time for an ever-decreasing rate of compensation, particularly because we're all committed to our residents. We all want to work hard in our wards, and we need the time to be able to do that. I appreciate that some councillors don't need any allowance, but if we are to reflect our community properly, we must recognise that some do. These proposals are for a 10% increase. Not a 10% annual increase, but a 10% increase since 2012, after 11 years. They will not bring the allowance back to their level of 10 or 20 years ago. We will still have the second lowest allowances in Kent, but this is a proportionate and reasonable step to addressing the problem. The proposal is to link the allowances increases in future to staff pay, which means that we will not have to have a similar discussion, in my opinion, and I hope, for the rest of this council. I'm moving option A, which is at 5.1 in the report, to adopt the proposed amended 2023-24 Members' Allowances Scheme as set out in Annex 1 to the report, inclusive of the 10% increase to basic and special responsibility allowances, and to index link a yearly increase in allowances to the cost of living increase. And for that proposal to go before the East Kent Joint Independent Remuneration Panel, fondly known as ECJERP, the remuneration panel can then make recommendations back to the council. Any recommendations can be considered by council at a future meeting, and if no recommendations are received from ECJERP, the council is asked to delegate the authority to approve the final scheme to the Section 151 officer. Thank you.
Can I have a seconder? Councillor Whitehead. Councillor Whitehead. The item can be
Councillor Wing. But people want to debate, so lots of people want to debate.
Councillor Wingham.
Thank you. My hand was up first. I need some clarity because I actually have a paid parking bay on Harbour Towers and had to exclude myself from the fee and charges increase. If we link any subsequent councillor increase in allowances to officer pay rises, then surely we would all have to declare an interest and actually remove ourselves from a vote, because technically we'd be voting to give ourselves an increase.
Thank you.
Samira can advise on that.
Right.
Samira can advise on that. So if you go to Samira.
What? Not now.
Yeah, now.
Yeah. So the legal beaver wants to advise you on something. So.
Thank you, Chair. There is a blanket exemption in relation to fees and charges that you're referring to, so we wouldn't be needed to declare any interest when it comes to that particular item.
If we're linking a vote that we would take, if we're linking a vote to allowances to staff, I think that's what you said, Councillor Everett, then surely we'd have to declare an interest.
Can I make a point of clarification, Chair, pleise?
Go ahead, Councillor Everett.
I think I understand what you're saying, Councillor Wing, but I think the issue is council does not make a decision about pay rates for staff. That's made by officers out of the budget. So it's not a decision that councillors make. We put the money into the budget, but we don't decide as councillors what the pay rates are. That's for the head of service to make that decision, and that's why there wouldn't be a conflict of interest apart from anything else.
Right. Councillor Davis, you put your hand up.
Thank you, Chair. Just for the record, I'd like to remind our... Sorry, forgot myself for a moment. I would like to remind our colleagues on the other side of the chamber of their alleged socialist credentials. I know champagne has gone up quite a lot in the last couple of years. I think it's extremely churlish that when we've just awarded 5.7% to the dustmen, who work very hard in adverse conditions, that they would want to award themselves a 10% increase, but then I guess the Labour Party's got to get its income from somewhere. I will not be agreeing to this because we serve the public, we're here to do a job, and this is an allowance to help us do that. It is not a salary or an income, and I therefore will not be supporting this motion.
Right, Councillor Whitehead.
Thank you very much, Chair. It's interesting to come after that statement because I joined this council 5 years ago as a disabled single mother with not much chance of champagne, to be honest, and I think trying to turn this into something related to wealth is somewhat extraordinary considering that we have the lowest rates of councillor allowances in Kent. And again, trying to equate that with recent pay rises for employees makes no sense in the context of there being a decade without increase for councillors. I will openly admit that my opinion has changed on this. So when I first joined, like most councillors, I think, and hope, my main focus... Yeah, I'm sorry, I do tend to have a delay because I'm autistic, so it does take me a while to get words out. So, when I first joined, I did have a different opinion, in that I think that most of us join because we want to serve the public. We don't join because we look at the allowance and think, wow, that's a huge amount and I'm definitely going to go for that. We join because we want to make a difference in some way. And so, to me at that point, it felt like a very difficult concept, ever agreeing any kind of increase, because I knew what residents were facing. Then, I thought about the fact that we are supposed to be a representative council. And we cannot be a representative council if we are directly excluding people who, either through means or life circumstances, are not able to consider taking up the responsibility of being a councillor. So, just to give you an idea, LGA 2022 census recorded the following about councillor demographics. 40% of councillors are retired. Only 32% were in full or part-time employment. 64% of councillors hold a degree or equivalent or higher qualification. Only 4% hold no qualification. 59% of councillors are male. The average age of councillors in 2022 was 60 years old. Only 16% were aged under 45, and 42% of councillors were aged 65 or over. The system that we currently have skews democratic representation based on income and age and independent income. We have to ensure that the councillors that we have here are representative of our actual population. And it can't be that in an area of significantly high deprivation that we don't consider whether or not current allowances affect whether or not people can enter the world of politics. Thank you.
Well, thank you. We have on the list Pew, Wright and Manners. Is there anybody else that wants to put the hand up? Scobie. So if you just keep your hand up, we'll get round to you. Right, while Nick's doing that, well, Councillor Pugh, you're on.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you. I'll be honest, there's quite a lot that I agreed with Councillor Everett and with Councillor Whitehead, and a lot of what has already been said here tonight. It's right, none of us do this for the money, nor should we. Anyone that, particularly with these allowances, that's trying to be a full-time politician, I tell you not to, because it's not the reason to do it. I think it's incredibly important, and Councillor Whitehead has spoken about this, about inclusivity and ensuring that people who want to stand for public office can and do. But again, I don't think that it's the allowance that convinces people that they want to do that. We all do this in this chamber because we really care about making a positive contribution and difference to all of our residents' lives. It's as simple as that. I'm not going to be political about that and say that only the Conservatives care, because I don't think any of us here would have stood for office if we didn't believe that. What I do think is regrettable is that this proposal wasn't created on a cross-party basis. I understand the reasons why it wasn't, but I think it's incredibly important to try and find some consensus. Now, that may be that the administration and the leader knew that the Conservative group and others would never agree to a one-off 10% increase. I certainly wouldn't, and I think, as Councillor Davis has said, you can compare it to the increases that some of our workers have seen, because I think it is in stark contrast to that. I take exception to the report when it includes the allowances for Kent County Council and Medway Council as well. One's a unitary, one's a county council. I think it's entirely different, and I don't think that we can compare their allowances to the district. We may be the lowest of members' allowances in Kent. But over the last 10 or so years, I think it's important subsequent administrations, not just Conservative administrations, but administrations of all parties and none, have agreed by and large to not accept or put forward increases, because of course it should be us that is last on the list when any budget or any proposals are being put forward, and it should always remain so. I do support the proposal that members' allowances is linked to officers' increases. I think that's entirely fair, and if that had been brought to me and to the Conservative group prior to this coming to council, we would have supported that wholeheartedly. So I think it's really disappointing, but now is not the time for us to agree whether it be a one-off or not, a one-off 10% increase, and I won't be supporting it.
Thank you. A call upon Councillor Bright.
Thank you, Chair. I can stay calmer this time. I'd like to just reiterate a lot of what Councillor Whitehead said, and I think this is purely about being socialist. This is purely about allowing anyone, sorry, I'm not speaking loud enough. This is purely about allowing anyone to represent their community, be they nurses, care workers, teachers, people on 0 hours contracts. This is about people being out of pocket. Most of us, or many of us in this chamber tonight, are lucky enough that they can take time out of their jobs, they've got the flexibility they need, and they've got the income they need, they can afford childcare, etc. But many people out there can't, and I think it's really important that everyone is allowed to represent the place that they live and make decisions that impact on their lives and other people's lives. So I will be supporting this motion. Thank you.
I thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I just find it a little bit distasteful, I suppose, is the word I would choose, that we should be awarding ourselves or a pay rise. You can only spend £1 once, and I ask my constituents, the people in Cliftonville East, where they would like that pound spent. I was at the Litter Forum last week and was told that the reason there had been no beach cleaning and clifftop cleaning whatsoever since September the 4th from Botany Bay, Kingsgate along to Palm Bay was because there was no money whatsoever to pay for it. So several hundred hours of the community's time as volunteers was spent keeping our beaches and cliff tops and streets clean because there was no council provision. Now, I would ask the constituents in Cliftonville East where they would like that money spent, either additional allowances for councillors or to keep beaches and cliff tops clean. And I think they would choose not to have to go out themselves as volunteers unpaid, that they would expect the council to provide those services. Now, I understand that some of the arguments from across the room that about accessibility to local politics for people. Perhaps when we've got our own finances in order and we get a little bit better about sweating our assets, the assets that we have, the considerable property assets that we have in Thanet, and we start generating proper income from the resources that we have, then maybe that would be a time to start spending money. But you can only spend £1 once, and at the moment, I think the priority has to be on what's going to benefit the public. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Manners. A call on Councillor Braywood.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yeah, I have to agree with what Councillor Pugh says, Councillor Davis says, Councillor Manning says. I don't think that now is the right time to be increasing the members' allowance. I do think it needs a review because it's obviously been stagnant since 2015, but possibly review that in a year or 2 years' time. I'm actually surprised that some people in this chamber think that they do deserve a members' allowance, because a lot of the time they're receiving money for doing absolutely nothing. There's only a very small minority of people in this chamber. There's only a very small minority of people in this chamber that are probably averaging £1 an hour doing casework, daytime, weekends and evenings.
He's very hard working, very hard working.
So yeah, like I mentioned, I do think it needs a review at some point in the future, but certainly not now. Thank you.
Thank you. Call upon Councillor Austin.
Thank you, Chair. I would like to reflect what Councillor Whitehead said. I also was not inclined to support this idea when I first heard about it, when I first heard about KCC councillors voting themselves large increases in allowances and so on. I was horrified. But since then, I have served as my party's election agent, and I have had really good potential candidates who've said, I'm sorry, I can't afford to do that because I'd have to give up some of my paid work. Indeed, some of my colleagues in this group have lost considerable amounts of paid work as a result of becoming councillors, and indeed one of them was in the marvellous situation of having to buy a car in order to be a green councillor. Go figure how much that has cost, because it isn't possible actually to get to all the meetings that that person needed to get to by public transport. So these are the considerations that we need to bear in mind. It's not as simple as it looks, and we are a really unrepresentative group as it stands. I personally, as an early retired person on a very modest income, find my councillor's allowance makes all the difference, and I know that's the case with a few other people as well, and it would make it easier to attract younger people, people in less well-paid jobs, etc., into the council. So I support this motion.
Thank you. I call upon Councillor Crittenden. Yeah.
Thank you. I wanted to firstly agree with Councillor Whitehead. This is about improving the opportunities we hope for a more diverse representation of our population among councillors. Picking up also with what Councillor Austin has said, I'm able to devote a lot more time to this role because the allowance allows me to work part-time. I'm freelance. Some of us have that opportunity. It's always difficult to talk about your own pay, whatever it is, and for the last 10 years we've skirted around and we've gone, no, we won't do it. And every year the recommendation has been, actually, you ought to do it. You ought to make a small increase. But for 10 years, we've gone no. And the only reason we're talking about 10% now is because we've balked at making a decision in the past. Thank you.
Thank you. I call upon Councillor Scobie.
Thank you, Chair. It's interesting to be in this debate again because when this was passed 10 years ago, I think I was one of the people that was pushing for it, and it's the same debate 10 years later. Now, interesting thing, I completely agree with what Councillor Braidwood said about some councillors maybe not doing the work, and judging by the amount of casework that Councillor Owen Hughes, Councillor Driver and I are picking up, that might be a reason why we are elected and certain others are not. I definitely agree with some of the comments from across the chamber here. This is not a salary, it is an allowance, and it is not necessarily a reason why somebody would accept taking on the role of a councillor. But if this was not there, it could definitely be a deterrent for people taking it up, and I think we heard from Councillor Austin there. If we are agreeing there has to be an allowance in the first place to encourage people from different backgrounds to come into it, then why would we allow it to devalue over time so that it makes it progressively harder for people to engage in this process? And the 10%, which I think people are fixing on, if you actually look at that in real terms, is very small. But even if you look at that 10%, as Councillor Everett said, this is on the basis of nothing happening for 10 years. And even before that small increase 10 years ago, nothing happening for the 10 years before that. So yet it is a big one-off figure, and there is now a plan to index that to officers. But that's really sort of the irrelevant fact here. If we're accepting there has to be an allowance to encourage people, then it is the prudent thing to do to make sure it's indexed and it is not reduced over time.
Well, thank you. Last one, Councillor Scott, please.
Hello, yeah, I'll keep it quite brief. I mean, I agree with my side with Councillor Pugh and many of my other colleagues have mentioned. I mean, I became a councillor because I was passionate. I really wanted to get involved with my community. I mean, I joined a town council, which is a completely unpaid, unallowance job. And I treat it as a job because I feel it's professional and that's what a job is. You act professional, you listen to your residents, who albeit could be your customers. And I just think when it comes to saying things like increasing it to make it more approachable, to diversify, I mean, as I see it, I don't actually see the current method anyone can apply to be a councillor. Anyone with the drive and the passion who cares can be a councillor. And I'm not sitting here on my riches. Certainly, I don't have riches. I take pay cuts to treat this as a full-time job. So to say that, you know, to assume that members in here, because I would never individually assume anyone what they can afford, what they can't afford. So to just come over and say, oh, maybe you can afford to be a councillor. No, I can't. But I do it because of the passion, and I do it because I care about my actual community, I care about Thanet, and I care about my ward, and I feel the same for these and for anyone else. And that's why I'm not going to, you know, vote in agreement with this. I'm going to refuse as well. So thank you.
I call on Councillor Everett to sum up, please.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I won't go on too much because I think we're all anxious to get on and go home. But just to reply to a couple of points that have been made, Councillor Pugh made the point about the allowances in Medway and Kent. Well, I've been a councillor in a unitary authority, and I can tell you for nothing that there's no way that the workload in a unitary authority is significantly greater than the workload for a district council in this authority. I think we demean ourselves really if we seriously believe that county councillors in Kent are worth 3.5 times what our district councillors are worth. There are people in this council who work far harder than some county councillors, I am certain. And I'm not naming names or identifying people, but that's just going to be the case. So I don't think it's unreasonable to include those. And I say to Councillor Manners, because he made the point, I think, about what residents in Cliftonville East would say. Well, the truth is that most residents will probably think councillors shouldn't get any allowance at all. And they go a bit further. They probably think most council officers should have their pay cut and work for nothing, because that's their opinion of them. And I understand that. And I understand the dynamics of this debate, and I understand why the Conservative group has to take up the position that it does, and unfortunately that's why nothing has changed over the last 10 years. It's not been able to have a sensible discussion, because there's never been a position that wasn't political and couldn't be brought down over a hung council. That's why this Labour group is bringing it forward. I'm grateful to the cross-party support from Councillor Austin, because this is an important issue. It needs to be resolved tonight and then put to bed. We shouldn't be talking about our allowances for the rest of this council. Thank you.
Right, thank you. It's been pointed out to me that you did put your hand up, Councillor Bayford, and if you would like to say something, you can go ahead.
As the leader has said, there is no good time to raise allowances, and I feel that the present time could not be worse when so many of our residents are suffering financially. I feel this sends a poor message to them. I do not think that 10% increase will enable anyone wishing to be a councillor to do so that could not do so now. I cannot possibly support this increase that would seem substantial to our residents. Thank you.
Thank you. We will go to a vote then. Yes.
Well, we can, if we want to do over half the people, if they want to have a recorded vote. Yeah.
Do you want a recorded vote? And put your hands up.
No. So those in favour of a recorded vote.
Those in favour of a recorded vote. Those against? That's it, put your hand up. The recording vote is lost.
So, by a show of hands. So.
Right. So, a show of hands. Those in favour.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, 32, 33, 34, 35, 36, 37, 38, 39, 40, 41, 42, 43, 44, 45, 46, 47, 48, 49, 50, 51, 52, 53, 54, 55, 56, 57, 58, 59, 60, 61, 62, 63, 64, 65, 66, 67, 68, 69, 70, 71, 72, 73, 74, 75, 76, 77, 78, 79, 80, 81, 82, 83, 84, 85, 86, 87, 88, 89, 90, 91, 92, 93, 94, 95, 96, 97, 98, 99, 100, 101, 102, 103, 104, 105, 106, 107, 108, 109, 110, 111, 112, 113, 114, 115, 116, 117, 118, 119, 120, 121, 122, 123, Okay, and those against? Any abstentions?
Any abstentions?
So does anybody want? Okay, so
There's one over there now.
two.
Do you want it to go?
No, I'm just saying there's two people. Yeah, so that's agreed. That's agreed. Yeah, it's agreed.
So that's agreed, members? Thank you. Agenda item 15, funding the new affordable homes. I call upon Councillor Whitehead.
Thank you, Chair. And yes, I am noting that you're telling me to keep it short, Steve, but it's just what it is. So, previously in this chamber, on the 13th of July, I set out both our ambition and our strategy to deliver over 400 new affordable homes for rent over the coming 4 years, a huge increase on our previous delivery rates. Our strategy is based on mixed delivery, including our own high specification developments, with future plans for growth in energy efficiency and delivery via unused Section 106 units, which we risk losing if we do not expand our model to include them. As councillors, we have already approved developments as part of this strategy. It began with the delivery of 42 homes at Spitfire Green, and now continues with the potential acquisition of 73 more homes, to be discussed in principle this evening. We have previously discussed this strategy in totality, with allocated budgets totalling 28.315 million over 3 years, and an approved further budget for the first 2 projects of the accelerated programme of 7.485 million. Our housing revenue account business plan assumptions include further tranches of funding for new build, 8.1 million in 25-26 and 8.1 million in 26-27. Our strategy report projected that the total cost of this accelerated programme would be between 90 and 100 million pounds in total, with 54 to 60 million funded from council borrowing and 36 to 40 million funded from external sources. Details about the potential sources of external funding were also provided in the July report. The currently approved budget of 36.051 million over 4 years is allocated to existing projects already agreed by Cabinet, which will deliver between 123 and 128 homes. Of this amount, 12.516 million is the 23-24 approved capital budget and is already committed to existing projects. Further resources over the 4 financial years from 23-24 to 26-27 will be required to complete the programme. It is important to emphasise, as before, that these are additional units. We are not in competition with housing associations and do not want to be. We are simply determined to ensure that any affordable housing created within the planning system doesn't disappear and is used to house our residents. If housing associations are interested in different models of delivery and are moving away from the delivery of smaller numbers of units, it is important for us to adapt and include these properties to maximise the delivery of affordable housing in Thanet. Identifying this need and working to include it within our strategy is essential, because the growth of our housing portfolio directly enables further growth via rent revenue and even better provision for residents. Officers have developed a detailed viability assessment tool to assess the viability of individual schemes, which is then used to inform a go, no-go decision for individual proposals. It is essential for the viability of the overall programme that only schemes that have a positive impact on the HRA business plan or general fund are delivered. To be viable, schemes need to show an overall surplus over a 30 or 50-year timescale, depending on the duration of any borrowing. The assessment tool operates like a mini business plan and takes into account all relevant costs and income, including rent income, capital costs, professional fees, and project management, the cost of borrowing and management, maintenance costs, and depreciation over the lifetime of the homes. Although viable schemes show a surplus over their lifetime, cash flow in the initial years is often in deficit. It is this cash flow deficit that acts as a limiting factor in the scale of this programme. Each new project will be reported to Cabinet with details of its impact on the housing revenue account and the cash flow position over its lifetime, and only schemes that are financially viable will be recommended for approval. We have already approved the funding and delivery of a further 47 homes on identified sites as part of the ongoing new build programme, with construction due to start early in 2024. There are further capital resources available within the existing approved HRA capital programme, and a site identified with capacity for around 20 homes. However, it is important to note that this is dependent on external funding for 40% of the cost, which is yet to be secured. In addition, following the approval of the accelerated programme by Council in July 23, the Council is in negotiation for the acquisition of a further 51 homes, committing £7.485 million. Since July, opportunities have arisen to acquire a further tranche of new homes, in total 73 homes across 5 sites. The details of all these sites will be presented to Cabinet for approval, setting out details of the costs and financial viability. This report recommends an interim budget of £12 million to fund these purchases. Details of the match funding in the form of discounted purchase values or grant funding will be considered by Cabinet when considering each individual project. It is important to note that all proposed sites will be fully reviewed. As each site is identified and evaluated, proposals for affordable and sustainable developments come forward to Cabinet for approval. Capital budgets will be reviewed as part of routine budget setting and monitoring as these programmes progress, so that Council can approve the necessary funding at the appropriate time. This needs to be a fully open and transparent process, and all checks and balances are in place to enable this. As may be obvious by now, I am more than happy to field any questions and answer any queries, because this needs to be a process that we are all invested in. Today, Council is asked to approve 2 recommendations: that we approve an additional interim budget of £12 million to the single acquisitions and development budget to continue delivering the accelerated affordable housing delivery pledge, and to note that detailed projects will continue to be presented to the Cabinet for approval as they are identified. I am, as always, extraordinarily proud of housing and of finance for all the work that has gone into supporting our commitment to residents' housing needs. The scale of what has been achieved in a short period of time is extraordinary, and it is testament to the hard and often unseen work that officers put into delivering for Thanet. We are heading into the 5th month of this administration. Using previous averages, we were producing around 8 properties across this duration. Across the last 5 months, we have approved the detailed delivery of 61 homes. To be fully clear about the impact of this strategy, if councillors support these acquisitions, we will have increased social housing delivery within this council by 500% in 5 months. I am so proud of everyone in this council who has worked on this strategy, and extend thanks on behalf of every one of the 1,604 households on our housing register. Providing secure and affordable homes is quite literally life-changing for residents, and the difference that this stands to make to our community is extraordinary, and I cannot thank you enough. I move the recommendations set out in the report.
Can I have a seconder, please?
Councillor Yates.
Yates. Thank you.
A couple of councillors. Councillor Pugh.
Oh.
Thank you, Chair. Sorry, I will be quick. I appreciate that probably some people are getting a bit tired, and it's getting late. Firstly, I'd like to thank Councillor Whitehead for bringing this forward. I'm sure you've put a lot of hard work into this, along with the housing team and the finance team, so I commend everyone for that. Firstly, I'd just like to say, and I apologise, Chair, that this isn't technically related to what this is, but I, for one, enjoyed hearing Councillor Whitehead speak, even though she went over her allotted time, and I'm not trying to make a point of that. But what I did notice was that everyone was sitting here, listening to what she was saying, and I'd like to make a point that earlier, unfortunately, when I was speaking and others were speaking, they were shouted down and shouted over when they were trying to wrap up, when they went over their time. So I'm hoping that in general, there can be a little bit more leeway for all members who may slightly go over the allotted time, because I think Councillor Whitehead made a valuable contribution there, and I don't think it would have been fair for her to have cut off when the time ended. What I would say particularly about this agenda item is that I'm still quite concerned, and make no mistake, very much support more affordable housing across the district. I think we have a real shortage, and it's something that all residents are concerned about. And of course we need it. We've got people on the temporary accommodation and the housing register and everything. I completely understand that. But I'm still concerned about how all of this will be funded. I understand that in general, 54 to 60 million of it will come from the council borrowing itself, particularly at a time when rates are very high. I don't think that's particularly a wise decision. But we're also under the assumption that we're going to be able to get external funding of about 30 or 40 million from elsewhere. This district has just been awarded £600,000 from central government to try and help unlock the development of much needed homes for the council. And of course that's great. But £600,000, if it was added into this, is a drop in the ocean compared to what we need to deliver. So I'm still concerned about that. I appreciate why it's been brought forward and that we need affordable housing across the district. But again, I just think that this is the potential for costs to spiral out of control. And as we know, many people, when they see a local authority looking to purchase land or assets, suddenly prices go up. And we're seen as a bit of a piggy bank. But thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Pugh. Councillor Davis.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to reiterate what my colleague Councillor Pugh said and to express my concerns regarding how this is going to be funded, because there's a lot of assumptions, and to quote an old phrase, to assume makes an ass of you and me. I don't think we should be working on assumptions, and I think we have to be very, very careful about borrowing 40% of £100 million at current interest rates. I would recommend caution and possibly looking at what we can build ourselves instead of just keep going out to the market, because although I discussed this with officers before, I don't believe that the price per square foot can't be bettered by providing ourselves as opposed to going out to third-party developers. So I've got a value issue as well as the speculative nature of the funding. Thank you.
Thank you. Call on Councillor Everett, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. And when these sums of money are bandied around, I sort of understand the caution that comes from opposition members, but I know that there's a huge amount of work been done on the finances behind what's being proposed here. I think we have to recognise that delivering affordable homes and also ending the temporary accommodation situation where people are going out of areas, which is related to it, is the biggest priority for this council. It is the most damaging thing which is happening to our residents. But we would not be gambling, we would not be taking risks. And I rely on Mr Blundell and Mr Porter and the finance team for all the expertise that they've put into putting this policy together. And I think you Councillor Pugh said what good officers we had earlier. I think you should have some trust in them, because they wouldn't be bringing forward proposals that were reckless. In terms of the detail, there will be an opportunity to look at the finances behind each individual set of purchases at Cabinet. I think that's probably the place to do it rather than here tonight in terms of the overall budget. But certainly we should answer any questions that come forward in that process. I'm satisfied by it, they're satisfied by it. Let's hope we can satisfy you about the finances too. Thank you.
Right. Members, we are moving towards 10:30. Councillor Yates, can you be brief, please?
I'll be very brief. Councillor Everett's just stolen my thunder and said exactly what I was going to say, which is each new project will come to Cabinet with cash flow forecasts. So let's look at the detail. Happy to be scrutinised then when there is the detail. So if you want affordable motions, please support this. If you want affordable homes, please support this tonight. Thank you.
Right. Do members agree then?
Someone not? No? You want to vote? Do you want to vote? So,
Those in favour of the motion then? It's lost. Those against? That's agreed. Agenda item 16, review of outside bodies, 23-24. I move the recommendation as set out in the report be adopted. Would the Vice Chair please second?
Chair, I agree.
Do members agree? Agenda item 17, changes to committee. I move that the recommendations set out in the report are adopted. Would the Vice Chair please second?
Seconded, Chair.
Group leaders may wish to take this opportunity to change to their nominations to committees, panels and boards for the remainder of 2023-24. Councillor Everett, do you wish to advise on nomination changes?
No, thank you, Chair.
No?
Does he not want to change his membership? Sorry.
So,
do you want me to say it?
Nick's pointed out to me, do you want to change the membership of the Boundary Location Party?
Sorry, Chair, I thought that was in the report. Okay. I would like to replace Councillor Will Scobie from the Boundaries and Electoral Arrangements Working Party with myself. Thank you.
Councillor Pugh, do you want any changes?
We have no changes, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Garner?
No changes.
Councillor Warrow?
We have no changes, Chair.
Right. Do members agree? Agreed. Concludes the business for the meeting of the council.